Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Legion of the Pirate King Mugiwara no ADHD. With a larger crew come unique challenges and obstacles they must overcome together, including conflicting personalities and different wants and needs to have an enjoyable and sustainable journey. The story covers canon arcs and how they are handled given the expanded roster, but also includes a heavier emphasis on the slice-of-life moments between major arcs at sea. Adios.
As Luffy and Usopp mess with the whip staff, they hear a loud banging on the door and an unfamiliar voice shouting, "Get out here, you damn pirates! Come fight me like real men!" Scared, Usopp looks at Luffy. "I think he's talking to you. I'll just stay here and keep steering the ship while you go deal with that." Laughing, Luffy rolls up his sleeves as he walks to the door. Using his foot he roughly pushes it open, knocking the man on the other side over the railing and down to the main deck. Stepping through the door frame, he balls his hands into fists and presses them against his sides and trying to put on his toughest looking face. "Who are you and what the hell are you doing on my ship?" The man on the deck picks himself up and glares up at the pirate, whose face is half covered in bandages. Pulling out his sword he shouts, "Who I am is none of your business, you filthy pirate." Pulling back his sword he lunges at the pirate above him, slashing through the railing separating the rear deck from the main. Luffy dodges out of the way of the attack and yells out in frustration at the damage being done to his ship, "Watch it." From the crow's nest, Zoro has not yet been able to get back to sleep. Hearing the commotion below he wrinkles his brow and mutters, "Is that? No, it couldn't be." Jumping down to the main deck, hoping to reduce damage to the ship, Luffy faces the unknown swordsman who yells, "I've been hunting down pirates like you for years. Do you think you can get away with trying to kill my partner?" Lifting the sword over his head he brings it crashing down towards Luffy, who rolls out of the way before it lands. The blade slices into the deck, sending splinters flying in every direction. From the top of the crow's nest, Zoro says to himself, "That voice, it has to be him." Picking himself up, he stretches his arms over his head trying to shake free of his grogginess. If it was who he thought it was, Luffy could manage by himself long enough for Zoro to shake the cobwebs from his mind. Angrily, Luffy yells, "I don't know who you or your partner is." Stretching both hands towards the swordsman, he grabs him by the shoulders before twisting and sending him flying at the center mast. The swordsman slams into the pole and drops to the ground, shocked at the pirate's strength and the way his arms seemed to stretch like they were made of rubber. Hearing the sound of the swordsman slamming into the mast before he feels the crow's nest shaking from the impact, Zoro jumps over the railing and begins climbing down as quickly as possible. "Johnny, please tell me that isn't you down there." From his position lying on the deck, the swordsman attempts to see who is talking to him, but is blinded by the rays of the sun. Instead he shouts from his prone position up at the descending pirate, "Who in the hell is using my name like they know me?" Confused, Luffy stops his assault and shouts up at the swordsman turned combat instructor, "Do you know this guy Zoro?" Gasping in shock at the pirate's words, Johnny shouts, "Big bro Zoro? Is that really you? The hell are you doing on a pirate ship?" Dropping onto the deck, Zoro walks over to Johnny and offers his hand. Once the invader is on his feet he decides to address his captain's questions first, knowing that the damage Luffy could do far outweighed what Johnny was capable of. "Sure do, Captain. We used to hunt pirates together back in the day. The hell is Yosaku at? I thought you two were working together." Still confused, Johnny sheaths his sword. "He's back on the island your captain just blew up. He needs help, big bro. He got sick and I don't know what to do. We've been trying to sleep it off here but it just keeps getting worse. I'm afraid he might." He trails off, not wanting to speak his fear into existence. Opening the door to the galley, Usopp pokes his head out. "Everything all right out here, Captain? What's Zoro doing down here?" Zoro calls out to Usopp, "Let Kaya know she's got another patient coming." Confused, Usopp closes the door and picks up the Den Den Mushi, relaying the message to Nami who happened to be relaxing in the observation room. Turning back to Johnny, Zoro instructs, "Get Yosaku. We've got a doctor who can take care of him, but it won't do any good if he's out on that island." Eyes wide, it takes Johnny a moment before he realizes that there may be an answer to his prayers here on the ship. He scales the side of the Going Merry to his dinghy, You got it, big bro. Several minutes later, Johnny returns and the crew use ropes to lower a plank that Yosaku is placed onto before lifting him up onto the deck of the Going Merry. Kaya and Nami have joined Luffy, Usopp and Zoro. Kaya kneels beside the sick man. Frowning, she waits as Johnny secures his boat to the Going Merry and climbs back onto the deck before asking, when was the last time he ate any citrus? Johnny shrugs his shoulders, I dunno, probably a couple weeks ago. Yosaku don't like fruits much, usually leaves them all for me. Why's that matter? Pushed down her irritation, Kaya responds, because your friend here has scurvy, and a pretty bad case of it by the look of him. A few more days and he would have died. Recognizing the term, Nami makes her way into the galley and returns with a pair of oranges which she hands over to Kaya, who peels one and places a slice into Yosaku's mouth. The swordsman attempts to spit the fruit out, but Kaya holds his mouth closed until he is forced to swallow it. Still confused, Johnny asks, the hell is scurvy? Irritated, Nami places her hands on her hips. What do you mean, what is scurvy? It's what you get when you don't eat any citrus, you idiot, probably the stupidest way to die out here. As the vitamin C works its way through Yosaku's system, color begins to return to his pale skin and he slowly sits up. In a daze he mumbles, do I gotta eat more o' that sour stuff? Pulling another slice from the orange, she places it into Yosaku's mouth. You sure do, and you need to stay on bed rest for at least a day. It's lucky you ran into us or this would be a lot worse. Chewing the fruit with a disgusted look on his face, Yosaku forces himself to swallow it as he warily looks at what remains in the young woman's hands. As the group continues to discuss the situation, an idea rolls around in Luffy's mind. For some reason Johnny had tried fighting him alone, despite how big his ships were and how big of a crew he likely had backing him up. Not only that, but the pair were already friends of Zoro, which meant they were strong. He interrupts the conversation, alright, guess you two are joining my crew. We need two strong fighters who can guard the ships when we are in port. Whipping his head towards Luffy, Johnny responds angrily, what are you talking about, bro? We can't join a pirate crew, we're bounty hunters. Zoro smacks Johnny in the back of the head. The hell did you think I was before I joined? Quit being an idiot and take the offer seriously? Lost for words, Johnny tried to work through the puzzle in his head. I've been a bounty hunter for so long it feels wrong to join a pirate crew. But on the other hand, if Big Brother Zoro joined, they can't be that bad. While he is still making up his mind, Yosaku swallows another orange slice and says, ah, what the hell, we might as well join up, Johnny. Without their help I'd be dead, we kinda owe him. It was a hard point to argue against. Johnny decides to go along with his partner's decision. Fine, we'll join your crew. But don't think we're gonna go round looting and burning like a couple of thugs. Laughing, Zoro reassures his pair, they aren't that kind of pirates. Half the time I think the captain here doesn't even know what a pirate is. Turning angrily to Zoro, Luffy shouts, you do too know what a pirate is. Rolling his eyes, Zoro replies, whatever you say, Captain. Still confused, Johnny tries to figure out what it means for a pirate not to act like a pirate. Eventually he gives up, hoping that with time things will make more sense. The rest of the day is relatively smooth. Luffy and Johnny help carry Yosaku over to the Going Merry and they place him into one of the empty rooms for observation. Opting to stay by his friend's side, Johnny watches over Yosaku, occasionally helping Kaya feed him orange slices to aid in his recovery. During lunch, Usopp grabs 3 extra plates and brings them down to the second level so that Kaya and Johnny don't need to leave Yosaku's side. Somewhat confused at the amount of food he is taking below deck, not knowing about Johnny or Yosaku, the other crew members decide not to question it as they eat lunch in relative silence. The afternoon continues much like the morning, with Yosaku making a faster than expected recovery while Johnny and Kaya tend to him. At dinner, Yosaku is deemed by the doctor to be strong enough to walk and with support from both Johnny and Kaya makes his way into the dining hall to join the others. As soon as they open the door, Kobe spots the group and in confusion asks, who are those two? Zoro laughs and bangs his fist into the table. Da ha 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 ha, a couple of strays the captain picked up. Think we can keep him? Grinning at the swordsman, Nami, Usopp and Luffy decide to play along. The navigator picks up where he left off. I don't know, they smell like a can of sardines. Can we really afford to stink up our brand new ships? With a pout, Luffy begs, "Please Kobe? I promised to feed them and take them for walks." Usopp shakes his head sadly. "I guess you expect me to wash and clean up after them? Sure seems like a lot of work." Irritated at the irreverent way the others are talking, Kobe snaps, "Be serious. Who are these two and why are you acting like this isn't a big deal?" Zoro says with a grin, "These knuckleheads are Johnny and Yosaku. A couple of bounty hunters I used to work with. Got into a fight with the captain, but you know how that goes." The straw hat wearing captain flexes his muscles. "I'm a pretty tough guy. They should have known better than to mess with us." Realizing that the line of questioning was not getting Kobe the answers he needed and wanting to keep the peace, Mary interjects, "How long will our new guests be staying, Captain?" Pressing his right fist into his chin, Luffy screws up his face as he pretends to count the fingers on his left hand. Once he has finished mouthing the word 5, he says aloud, "I was thinking forever. They already agreed to join the crew as our guards. I don't see any reason why we should kick them out. Bounty hunters, wannabe marines and children." Nami rolls her eyes and mumbles under her breath, "This is the most dysfunctional pirate crew around." Luffy looks inquisitive at the navigator. "What was that, Nami?" Grinning at the captain, Nami thinks of something on the fly. "I said it's lucky we found such strong fighters to protect our ships on the Grand Line." Kaya's exhaustion wins out for a moment and she says in a much harsher tone than she intends, "Speaking of the Grand Line." She scans the gathered crew who all look expectantly back at her. "There is a role that we really need to fill before we get there." Before she can say more, Luffy shouts, "A musician." Biting her tongue, Kaya pauses a moment before continuing, "Sure, a musician would be nice. But we really need a more experienced chef." Turning to look at Rika, she says in her most compassionate tone, "No offense Rika, I love the food you and Carrot have been making. But there are dietary needs for a crew this size that only a trained chef can address. Otherwise we run the risk of more people getting scurvy like Yosaku, or something even worse." The young girl shrugs her shoulders, "None taken. I already told the captain we need a real chef. I don't know how to use half the equipment in the kitchen. We need a professional in there." Ninja nods in agreement. Johnny interrupts the pair, "If ya need a chef, why not try the Bharati?" Confused, the other crew members look at Johnny. Usopp wonders aloud, "What's a Bharati?" Rika blurts out, "It's where the plates on the ship came from. I saw their seal a few days ago when I was cleaning up after dinner. It looks like some kind of floating restaurant." A confused look crosses her face and she says hesitantly, "But that's not possible, right?" Nodding his head, Johnny confirms the girl's suspicion, "Sure is. A floating restaurant with some of the toughest cooks in the East Blue." Yosaku makes eye contact with Zoro before adding, "We heard a rumor of some dude with the eyes of a hawk hanging out there. Figured you might want to check it out, big bro." To Zoro it feels as though time slows to a stop and his eyes grow wide. Was it possible that he would already get to meet the man standing between him and his dream? Dracule, hawk eyes, Mahawk. Before he can say anything Luffy shouts, "That's awesome. Where is this Bradyway place?" Johnny chuckles at the captain's mispronunciation, "Dahahaha, it's the Bharati. It's only about a day and a half from here. I'll give directions to your navigator after dinner." Clapping his hands together, Luffy exclaims, "Yes. Then let's go to this floating restaurant place so we can get a chef." The crew begin discussing the plan as they return to eating. Kaya leads Johnny and Yosaku to Zoro, who makes room for the pair. Once she is satisfied that Yosaku is stable, she makes her way to Tamanegi after seeing him struggle to lift a fork with his bandaged hands. The night creeps on as Johnny and Yosaku settle in and get to know the rest of the crew. Eventually the group moved into the observation room, which has become the default hangout area on the ships. As it grows late, members of the crew leave for bed until only Johnny, Yosaku and Zoro are left. Once they are alone, Johnny leans in close and asks in a conspiratorial tone, "So what's the plan, big bro? You playing the long game with that straw hat kid? Gonna flip on him when his bounty gets big enough?" Leaning back in his seat, Zoro takes a swig from his beer before responding, "It isn't like that, Johnny. He's a good kid. I think he's got a shot at being the next pirate king and I want to be there when it happens." Johnny roars with laughter, "Dahahahahahaha, the pirate king? Are you serious, big bro? A small timer like him would be lucky to make it even a day on the Grand Line." Shrugging his shoulders, Zoro places the half-finished bottle on the table in front of him, on his own maybe, but with help from us I think you'll be just fine. Rising to his feet, Yosaku stretches his arms over his head and lets out a loud yawn before saying sleepily, "Guess we'll have to stick around and see. Can you imagine the next Pirate King coming out of the East Blue?" Rising to his feet, Johnny joins his friends and the pair make their way to the door, leaving Zoro alone with his thoughts. Finishing his drink, Zoro thinks to himself, Luffy's dream to be the Pirate King is almost as crazy as my dream to be the world's strongest swordsman. Rising to his feet, he notices that the Den Den Mushi Luffy had worn the day he had gone overboard has dried off. Picking up the snail and carefully inserting it into his ear, he makes his way to the Going Merry to begin his night shift. The shifts that are relatively uneventful, a welcome relief from the chaos of the previous night. As the sun rises the next morning, Kaya does her rounds. Chow Chow's wounds have fully healed and he is grateful to be freed from his restrictive bandages. Tamanaji's blisters have almost completely gone away and he can now pick things of time without assistance. Pieman's cold is starting to subside. He still sneezes occasionally but his energy has returned to where it was prior to his late night swim. Luffy's wound has completely closed, with only a light scar remaining in his place. The scabs on Mary's back have fallen away and in their place are scars, letting him move freely without fear of reopening his wounds. Yosaku has almost fully recovered and out of restlessness Kaya is finding it difficult confining him to his room for rest. Overall, Kaya is proud of her work and even more proud that she was able to remain calm throughout the process. As the crew gathers in the dining room, Usopp takes a seat at a table far from the others, a long piece of fabric draped in front of him. The snipper flashes a hand signal to Ninjin, Pieman and Tamanegi who break away from the rest of the crew and make their way to him. Not wanting to be left out, Rika follows the group and sits between Ninjin and Pieman. Catching each of the children's eyes with a mischievous look, Usopp leans in close and whispers, "There is danger aboard these ships." Letting out an audible gasp, Rika claps her hands over her mouth as she waits for more information. Ninjin nods, familiar with the routine. "What's the mission, Captain Usopp?" Grin spreading across his face, Usopp points at the hand-drawn map on the table. It shows both the Going Merry and Going Shopping, but each room has been relabeled with a fantasy title. As Rika studies the map, her small body is filled with excitement and she can feel her skin tingling in anticipation of her first legendary adventure with the Usopp pirates. Usopp runs his finger across the map until it arrives at the basement of the Going Shopping labeled the dungeon. "We must free the pixies and return them to Pixieland." 4 sets of eyes scour the map searching for the destination until they notice a small boat, the one Johnny and Yosaku had arrived on, anchored off of the Going Merry labeled Pixieland. Eyes wide, Tamanegi looks up at the sniper and asks quietly, "What challenges await us, Captain Usopp?" Shaking his head back and forth, Usopp replies sadly, "Our spies were too afraid to describe the horrors in this mystical land." His expression brightens as his smile returns. "We must be prepared for anything on this quest." Piemon glances over at Rika before asking, "How will she fight, Captain? We only have our 4 swords." Nodding, Usopp places his right hand under his chin. He ponders the problem for several moments before an idea occurs to him. "I suppose she will have to use mine." The boys gasp as he draws a long wooden sword from his hip. Taking Rika's small hand in his, he places it around the hilt of the swords. Locking eyes with the young girl, he says in his most serious voice, "Will you keep my blade safe, Rika?" Eyes watering as she is filled with pride, Rika nods enthusiastically, "Of course, Captain Usopp." The girl's loud shout causes several of the older crewmates to look over questioningly at the group. Deciding that they didn't care what the kids were getting up to, they shrugged their shoulders and returned to their conversation. Usopp nods his head slowly. "Good, we will wait until the coast is clear before making our way to the dungeon." The children nod as they do their best to appear natural, occasionally stealing glances at the table that the rest of the crew are at, willing them to finish eating and leave. At long last the older members of the crew depart, spreading out across the ship as they prepare for another day of sailing. Peeking his head out of the dining room, Usopp scans the deck. Spotting Yosaku and Zoro fishing together on the flying bridge, he gathers the children towards him. "To go down we must first go up." The kids look at him in confusion and he continues, The tools we need to get into the dungeon are hidden in the land of clouds, guarded by 2 trolls. Licking his lips as his own excitement grows for the upcoming adventure, he looks down at the map that he is now holding between his hands. We must journey through the haunted woods and ascend the jagged mountain pass to reach the land of clouds. The 5 make their way down to the main deck and sneak into the greenhouse. Wooden swords swinging at imaginary plant monsters. They slowly make their way to the observation deck before tiptoeing up the stairs to the flying bridge. Up on the flying bridge, Yosaku and Zoro enjoy the morning air as they fish beside one another. Hearing a creaking sound in the stairs, Yosaku asks, "Did ya hear that, big bro?" Looking over at the stairs, Zoro sees Usopp's right eye and long nose peeking around the corner and 5 shadows stretching from the stairs onto the deck. He rolls his eyes, must have been the wind. The swordsman desperately did not want to be sucked into whatever foolish game Usopp was playing. A single thought ran through his head: please don't engage with them, Yosaku. Confused, Yosaku looks as well. From his vantage point, he can see all 5 of the intruders crouched on the stairs. He blurts out, "You blind big bro? It's Longnose and the kids." He shouts at the group, "Yo, big bro Usopp. What are you and little sis Rika and the little bros doing?" Having been spotted, Usopp shouts, "Charge!" The 4 children rush Yosaku, wooden swords drawn over their heads, and smack him in the back and sides with their fake weapons. Despite having not fully regained his stamina after his recent bout with scurvy, the wooden swords have very little effect on Yosaku. Realizing that they are playing a game, he decides to play along. Clutching at his chest and falling to his side, the former bounty hunter says, "Oh no, little bros and little sis, I am defeated. Big bro Zoro, avenge me." Goddammit Yosaku, sighing, Zoro decides he might as well join in the game. Putting on his scariest face, Zoro twists his head to look at the kids. "You better get out of here before I eat you." The 4 scream in fear. Thinking quickly, Usopp points at the tackle box beside the swordsman. "Grab the tools before he gets you." Running towards Zoro, Rika snags the tackle box while the other 3 children wave their swords in the air, attempting to ward off the troll. Eyes locked on Rika, who is scurrying away with his tackle box, Zoro drops the act and shouts, "Rika, you better put that back right now." He leaps to his feet as Rika scrambles down the steps towards the observation deck. Realizing that they had crossed a line with the green-haired samurai, Usopp shouts, "Retreat." The 3 boys dash towards him and they all race after Rika. Catching up to her at the bottom of the stairs, Usopp looks around desperate for an escape from the now enraged swordsman who has already started down the stairs after them. Usopp spots the door for the observation room and darts towards it. Tossing the steel frame open, the group rushes inside before he slams it closed, preventing Zoro from following after them. Locking the door, he presses his back against it and sinks to the ground, panting for breath. The group can hear Zoro's fist pounding against the metal door and a muffled, "Give me back my tackle box or I'll kill you, Usopp." As he fights to regulate his breathing, Usopp weighs the options of giving in to Zoro's demand or continuing their quest. Suddenly he hears a distant voice shouting, "Gum gum pistol." The whistle of something flying through the air replaces the pounding on the door until the group hears a boom, and Usopp feels the doorframe shake violently. The preceding silence is soon replaced by the slap of sandals against the wood. Rising to his feet, Usopp peeks through the peephole in the door. Seeing Luffy on the other side grinning and waving, he unlocks it and throws the door open. Unconscious, Zoro's upper body slumps over the threshold and Usopp uses his foot to carefully push his head and shoulders back out onto the deck as Luffy steps over the swordsman into the observation room. Turning towards the sniper with a giant grin, the captain shouts, "I want to play too." For a moment, Usopp contemplates denying the request, but fear of Luffy's wrath changes his mind. "Of course. You can join us, Luffy. The Usopp pirates could always use your skills." Excited, the rubber man begins bouncing in anticipation. As the group gathers back together, Usopp announces, "Next we must travel to the gladiator arena. There we will prove our might against the strongest warriors in all the land." The children and Luffy cheer as Usopp points at the training room on Hid Gladiator Arena. Before they leave, Rika hands the toolbox to Luffy and says in a serious voice, "Keep this safe, Luffy." The captain grins, "You got it." They make their way out to the observation deck. carefully avoiding the unconscious Zoro. For a moment a worrying thought flies through Usopp's mind that they will need to deal with the swordsman when he wakes up. He shakes off the thought, deciding that it is a problem for future Usopp to deal with. Heading down to the main deck, they make their way into the hallway and through the men's locker room. Rika expresses concern about not going through the women's locker room, but the others can easily convince her that it is fine this one time. As they approach the door to the training room, they hear the sound of panting and wooden objects slapping against one another. Pushing the door open, Usopp spots Kobe and Johnny sparring with sticks. The others huddle around him as he says quietly, "Observe, the grand champions of the arena." With a quiet, "ooh," the group focuses their attention on the pair of combatants. "We must defeat them both to prove that we are worthy of moving on to the next level." Johnny and Kobe continue their match, oblivious to the group spreading out around them. Raising his wooden sword into the air, Tamenegi calls out his challenge, "Grand champions, I challenge you to a duel." Disengaging from one another, Johnny and Kobe look at each other in confusion. Kobe tries to figure out what is going on. "What are you talking about, Onion?" Pointing his wooden sword at the older boy, Tamenegi shouts back, "I said that I am challenging you to a duel." Still confused, Kobe looks down at the stick in his hand before his eyes travel across the room and land on the small wooden sword held by Tamenegi. Worry for the boy's safety creeps into his voice. "Are you sure about this?" Without answers, Tamenegi charges towards Kobe, swinging his sword wildly. The attack is met by Kobe, who easily knocks the swords from Tamenegi's hands, causing the boy to grunt in pain. The still healing blisters on the boy's hands throb and tears well up in his eyes. Choking them back, he says through gritted teeth, "You may have defeated me, but you will never defeat Carrot." Stepping forward, Ninjin aims his sword at Kobe. Johnny raises an eyebrow, "Ease up, Kobe, I'll handle little bro." Before the swordsman can move, Rika slides into place beside Ninjin. "If you want to get to Carrot, you'll have to go through me first." Shrugging his shoulders, Johnny turns to the girl, "You sure, little sis? I ain't gonna go easy on just 'cause you're a girl." Smirking, Kobe decides not to let Johnny know about Rika's training with Zoro. Aiming his stick at Ninjin, he responds to the earlier challenge, "Alright Carrot, let's do this." Charging at their opponents, Rika and Ninjin both go on the offensive. Rika is far more experienced, as she exchanges blows with Johnny, parrying his attacks and looking for an opening. Next to them, Ninjin is wildly flailing his sword, each attack easily deflected by the older boy. As the battles rage on, Piaman quietly sneaks behind Kobe, hoping to catch the older boy by surprise. Luffy desperately attempts to keep his cool, but lets slip, "So sneaky." Alerted to danger by Luffy's words, Kobe looks up away from Ninjin and scans the group. Not seeing Piaman, his eyes widen as he feels a small body jump land on his back, tiny arms and legs wrapping around his torso, pinning his arms to his sides. Letting out a loud sneeze and wiping the boogers off onto the back of the older boy's shirt, Piaman shouts, "Now Carrot." Unable to defend himself, Kobe takes the barrage of attacks from the young boy. Given no other option, he decides to surrender. I yield, let go of me." "Hooray!" cheers Piaman as he drops to the ground behind Kobe and turns to the fight between Johnny and Rika. It becomes immediately obvious that she doesn't need his help as Rika pins Johnny's stick to the ground with her right foot while she slaps him repeatedly across the chest with her wooden sword, yelling, "Take this," with each strike. Annoyed and slightly intimidated by the young girl, Johnny shouts, "I give up, little sis, knock it off." The group cheers loudly as the kids return to Usopp's side. Tamenegi retrieves his sword on the way, holding it gingerly as his hands continue to throb in pain. Lifting his hands to recapture the group's attention, Usopp announces, "Victory is ours, onward to the dragon's horde." Still confused, Kobe looks at Johnny, "What just happened?" Johnny shrugs his shoulders, "No friggin' idea, big bro." The group, half running and half jumping, exit the training room and pour through the locker room and out to the stairs. Ninjin and Rika both hop onto the railing and slide down while the others rush down the steps until they all reach the first floor hallway, skipping past the second floor on their way down. Landing at the bottom of the stairs, Usopp gathers the group together. Mary and Kaya's voices can be heard discussing something in the finance office. Once he has everyone's attention, he says, "This is where the tools we stole will come in handy." Holding out his hand, he asks, "Can you hand them over?" The group looks at Luffy, who stares blankly back at them. Pointing at the toolbox, it clicks in the boy's head, and eyes wide with excitement he hands it over to Usopp. Popping the lid open, the sniper pulls out a roll of fishing line and a bobber. Tying the bobber to the end of the line, he holds the device he had created in front of him and explains, "I'm going to use this to flip the switch in the dragon's lair so we can get into the dungeon. I need you all to stand back." The others take several steps backward and Usopp slowly creeps towards the door to the finance office. Dropping to the ground, he presses his ear to the bottom crack and hears Kaya saying, "A special buy one get one deal right now in Kokoyashi Village on oranges. We should write that down in CA." Pulling back slightly, he flicks the bobber under the door, holding tightly to the fishing line. Once the string is extended, he slowly pulls it towards himself. He presses his tongue against the roof of his mouth and flicks it forward, making a loud click. Hearing shuffling inside the finance office, he pulls the fishing line from under the door and shoves the tangled mess into his pocket. Leaping to his feet, he yells, "Run for your lives! The dragon is coming!" The group rushes for the stairs leading to the basement and scrambles down as quickly as possible. Usopp is the last to make it to the stairs. Before he can start his descent, Mary flings the door to the finance open and, spotting the retreating Usopp, shouts, "Get back here!" Not bothering to face the sheepman, Usopp shouts, "Smokestar!" He tosses a light gray pellet at the ground that bursts into a cloud of smoke filling the hallway. Launching himself down the stairs hidden by the smoke, the sniper joins the others in the basement. Once they have all caught their breath, he instructs them, "Gather up as many of the pixies as you can. We have to be fast if we want to make it past that dragon." Piemon raises his hand and says bravely, "I will fight the dragon, Captain Usopp. Just leave it to me. You and the others can escape with the pixies." He had an ulterior motive for his offer, wanting to get some time alone with Mary to ask if the older man would teach him about woodworking. Nodding his head solemnly, Usopp places his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Brave Pepper, we will go on without you and tell your tale until the end of time." The others shed a tear as they hug Piemon one by one. Ascending the stairs, as Piemon comes into view, Mary shouts, "So that's where you went." Reaching the top, the young boy takes several steps toward Mary as he aims his wooden sword at the former butler. "I won't let you harm my friends." Fowl drags head in confusion. Mary tries to figure out what the boy is talking about. While the older man is distracted, Piemon calls down the stairs, "Run while you have the chance." The rest of the group charged up the stairs from the basement before heading to the front of the ship to the stairs leading to the upper floors. As the footsteps fade into the distance, Piemon relaxes his grip and allows the wooden sword to drop to his side. Letting out a loud sneeze, he wipes the mucus away on the back of his arm sleeve. "Sorry about that, Mary. We were just playing a game." Noticing the amount of dust covering the floor from Usopp's smoke star, he spots a broom near the finance office door and makes his way towards it. Picking up the cleaning instrument, the young boy begins to sweep up the mess. "Do you mind if I ask you a question while I clean up in here?" Happy to see Piemon cleaning up after his friends and intrigued by the question, the older man replies, "What would you like to know, Pepper?" Piemon continues to sweep the dust into a small pile. "I know you built the Going Merry, so you must know a lot about woodworking." He stops cleaning for a moment and looks up in the man's eyes. "It's been a dream of mine since I was a child to open up my own woodworking shop, but I don't know the first thing about how to work with wood. Can you teach me?" He resumes sweeping, awaiting an answer. Smiling, the lamb-faced man makes his way towards the boy. Pulling a tissue from his pocket, he gently swipes away an errant booger from the boy's face before placing his hand gently on the youngster's shoulder, halting his cleaning. "I would be happy to teach you, as long as Miss Kaya is okay with it." From inside the finance office, Kaya waves her hand dismissively. "You don't need to get my permission for these things, Mary. If you want to teach him, then be my guest. It's a good chance for you to connect with the rest of the L crew." Her words were less kind and more dismissive than usual, due in combination to her lack of sleep and attempt to focus on the reports she was getting from the Black Den Mushi. She calls back out to Mary, "Would you mind closing the door? It's hard to focus." Slightly hurt at her tone, but understanding the factors that contributed to it, Mary says softly, "Of course, Lady Kaya. Old habit." Walking to the door, he closes it carefully before returning to Piemon, who has resumed sweeping. Unheard by Mary and Piemon, Kaya mutters to herself, "Finally, some peace and quiet." Mary turns his attention back to Piaman. We shall begin as every new woodworker does, with whittling. The rest of the crew continue to ascend the stairs until they arrive back at the hallway on the 3rd floor. They hear Zoro shouting from the main deck, "Get back here so I can kick your asses." Looking at Usopp for guidance, Luffy asks, "Where are we going next, Captain Usopp?" Worried about what will happen if Zoro catches them, Usopp says hesitantly, "Well, have to cross the eternal bridge to the world of new beginnings, but first we have to do something about that troll outside." Luffy wrinkles his forehead in thought, "What does it want?" Pointing at the tackle box in Luffy's hands, Usopp replies, "He wants to get back the tools we stole from him. All we need to do is..." Before he can finish asking Luffy to give the box back to Zoro, the captain kicks open the door to the deck. Jumping outside, he lifts the tackle box over his head and shouts, "Hey troll, if you want your tools back you'll have to catch me." Spotting Luffy, Zoro roars from across the deck, "Give it back or I'll slice you into 1,000 pieces." Straw Hat, laughing maniacally, Luffy dashes towards the 3rd mast and begins climbing, followed by Zoro. As the pair ascend towards the crows, Ninjin, Rika, Tamanegi and Usopp sneak out of the hallway and make their way toward the gangplank. As soon as he steps foot on the platform, Usopp looks up and sees Chow Chow, teeth bared and growling at them from the other side of the platform. Normally Chow Chow would tolerate Usopp and the kids' antics, but was feeling frustrated due to poor sleep the night before and didn't want to deal with being chased around the ship. Eyes widening, Usopp calls out to his companions, "The mighty Cerberus is guarding the world of new beginning. We have to get past him if we want to get the pixies to Pixieland." Rika pushes past Usopp, almost knocking him off the plank and into the water below. She says, not noticing how close she has come to causing an accident, "I will slay the beast." Raising her wooden sword above her head, she charges towards Chow Chow, screaming at the top of her lungs. Unlike Usopp and the kids, the dog recognizes Rika as a genuine threat, having seen her swordsmanship in Syrup Village. Filled with fear, he turns and dashes across the deck, tail tucked between his legs. Undeterred, the girl hops off the plank onto the Going Merry and continues chasing him. Rika laughs as she chases the dog around the perimeter of the deck, while Chow Chow barks in panic. "Bark! Stop! Bark! Leave me alone! Bark! Somebody save me!" As the others cross the bridge, Usopp remembers that the rope ladder needed to reach the small boat anchored below is currently stored in the bridge room. Pointing up, he shouts, "Quick, into the cave of memories." The trio race up the stairs and open the door quickly, hurling themselves inside before slamming it closed behind them. As Ninjin, Tamanegi and Usopp catch their breath, they don't notice Nami staring at them from behind a mountain of papers. Clearing her throat, the navigator says in a frustrated voice, "Usopp, I was clear at breakfast that I wanted privacy so I could work on my maps. What are you doing here?" Looking over at Nami, Usopp clears his throat, "Sorry about that, Nam. I mean Elder Witch. We are on a quest to return these pixies to Pixieland and need to get the steps of dissension." Walking quickly to the rope ladder, Usopp picks it up and tosses it over his shoulder. "We'll just be on our way if you don't mind." Nami says in an exasperated tone, "Just hurry up and get out of here, you idiot. And don't call me a witch again or it'll be the last words you ever say." She glares at the group until they have all exited the bridge, closing the door gently behind them in an attempt to appease the frustrated navigator. On the deck, Usopp spots Rika, who has pinned Chow Chow down and is scratching his belly. The dog's face is a mixture of terror and enjoyment. He calls out to the girl, "We have retrieved the steps of dissension. Do you want to come down with us to return the pixies to Pixieland?" Rika shakes her head, "No, I have to stay here, otherwise Cerberus might try to stop you." Shifting her gaze back to Chow Chow, she smiles and says in a baby voice, "Don't I, Mr. Cerberus? I have to keep you here, don't I?" As she says this, she runs her fingernails over Chow Chow's ears, his favorite place to be scratched. The dog's eyes glaze over as his tongue hangs out the side of his mouth. Usopp nods his head, "Stay safe, Rika. Don't let that monster eat you." The trio make their way to the deck railing and roll the ladder down the side of the ship before descending together to the dinghy below. Once they reach the small boat, the three spread their arms out and Usopp shouts, "Be free, pixies." In their minds, they can see the small creatures floating away and they stare in amazement for several minutes. Eventually, Ninjin asks, "What do we do now, Captain Usopp?" Not having anything else planned for the day, Usopp replies, "We should probably go stop Zoro from killing Luffy." The boys nod in agreement and make their way back up and over to the going shopping. It doesn't take long for them to find Luffy and Zoro standing on the flying bridge yanking the tackle box back and forth between them. Yosaku is attempting to break the fight up but is clearly outmatched thing. Making his way towards the captain, Usopp calls out, "We did it, the pixies have been returned to Pixieland. You can let the troll have his tools back now." Luffy suddenly releases his grip on the handle of the tackle box, causing Zoro to fall backward onto the deck with a thud. The box springs open, scattering fishing equipment across the deck. Ninjin and Tamanegi rush over and quickly pick up the spilled objects and hurriedly stuff them back into the tackle box before handing it to Zoro. The swordsman inspects the box as he makes his way over to his long-ignored fishing pole. Sitting down in his chair, he picks up the pole and casts a line over the side of the ship into the ocean below. Luffy, Ninjin, Piaman and Usopp make their way down to the observation deck, discussing their game, and are followed by Yosaku, who is curious how the rest of it played out. The other members of the crew join them individually or in small groups and gather near Usopp, who retells the adventure each time a new listener arrives, adding additional imagined details with each retelling. The remainder of the day goes by without incident, with the crew eating lunch and dinner together as usual. During dinner, Nami informs the others that they will likely reach the Bharati in the morning and that they should all try to get a good night's sleep. The next morning the crew gathers together in the dining room. As they eat, they make casual conversation while occasionally glancing out the window, knowing that they are nearing their destination. Ninjin, Piaman, Rika and Tamanegi are the first to finish their meals and begin playing hide and seek. While taking his turn seeking out his friends, Tamanegi glances at the window and his eyes widen. It takes him a moment for the words to come and he sputters, "We are here." The other kids spring out of their hiding places and rush to the window alongside Tamanegi, their game nothing but a distant memory. The older crew members, still finishing their meals, soon join them as the massive ship is slowly revealed, peeking above the horizon. After several minutes the crew piles out of the dining room onto the main deck. Kobe and Usopp head down the gangplank to the Going Merry and begin preparing the ship to dock while the others do the same preparation work aboard the Going Shopping. Unnoticed by most of the crew, a naval vessel slowly approaches the starboard side of the Going Shopping. Once the Navy ship is close, a loud voice booms over a bullhorn, "What are you pirates doing out here?" Turning to face the ship, the crew sees a sneering Marine lieutenant flanked by dozens of soldiers on the deck of the neighboring vessel. A beautiful girl in non-Navy attire stands next to the lieutenant. Johnny and Yosaku make their way to the ship railing. Recognizing the Marine, Johnny shouts back, "This is neutral water, full body. Ain't allowed to fight out here." Putting his hand above his eyes to shield them from the sin, Full Body scans the boat for the voice. The Marine laughs, "Bahahaha, is that Johnny and Yosaku? I knew you two were small-timers but didn't realize you were weak enough to be captured by pirates." The rest of the crew join them on the deck, ready to support Johnny and Yosaku if needed. Angrily Yosaku shoots back, "Who do y'all think you are? Callin' us small time?" Reaching into their coat pockets, the pair produce stacks of bounty posters and toss them into the air. As the papers drop, the crew notices familiar names like Alvida, Buggy and Django among a sea of pictures and names of pirates they haven't heard of. Nami's eyes catch on a poster depicting a shark man and she casually grabs and pockets the parchment, unnoticed by the others. Once the remaining posters have fallen to the ground, Johnny shouts, "We been hunting down some of the toughest pirates across the East Blue. Y'all better watch your words, Full Body." Still laughing, Full Body makes a hand signal sending two of his Marines into the bowls of the ship. They soon return with a large cannonball that they load into one of the starboard cannons facing the Going Shopping. Calming his laughter, he finally responds, "Bahahahaha, all that work and you still got captured by a no-name captain and some kids playing pirate. Don't worry, when my crew sinks your ships I promise I won't tell too many people how much of a failure you two are. You can take that secret to Davy Jones' locker." The rest of the Marines laugh and the girl next to Full Body looks up at him. "Why do we have to do this before our date?" Looking down at the girl, Full Body wraps his arm around her waist and loudly declares, "Don't worry, baby. We deal with pirates like this every day. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes." With another hand signal to his men, the Marine shouts, "Fire." The cannon is aimed at the second mast and an eager marine lights the fuse. At this range, there was little that the pirates could do to avoid being hit, and they braced for the impact. Unnoticed by the majority of those present, the naval helmsman had been slowly turning the boat towards its starboard side. Luckily Mary had spotted the shifting and gone to the flying bridge to adjust the going shopping's heading to avoid a collision with the naval vessel. As a result, the ships had turned so much that the naval ship was now positioned between the pirates and the Bharati, hiding both pirate ships from sight, ensuring that their conflict would not be noticed or stopped. When the fuse reaches its destination, there is a loud explosion as the cannonball is hurled free from the chamber. Out of instinct, Luffy stretches his arms and legs out and wraps his left arm and leg around the second mast and his right arm and leg around the third mast. The cannonball connects with the wrist of Luffy's left hand and upon connecting with the elastic skin begins to roll down his arm towards his torso rather than exploding on contact. As the cannonball approaches his chest, Luffy's chest is pushed backward as far as it will go and the boy shouts, "Gum gum." As the cannonball reaches the center of his chest, he finishes shouting, "Slingshot," tensing his muscles. Luffy's body snaps forward sending the cannonball flying back towards the marine ship. Marines dive out of the way, as Full Body shouts, "Dodge!" The cannonball flies over the Marines and passes harmlessly through the marine vessel, failing to connect with anything that would cause it to detonate. As the Marines pick themselves up, they hear an explosion and whirl around to see a massive hole in the roof of the Bharati where the cannonball had collided with the Titanic ship. Eyes wide one of the Marines shouts, "Shit!" The other Marines scramble to draw the sails as the helmsman adjusts the angle of their ship. The marine boat quickly splits off from the pirates and they make their way towards the Bharati, hoping to create enough distance to avoid blame for the damage they had helped to cause. Seeing that the naval vessel is no longer standing in their way, Mary likewise adjusts the ship's heading and the going shopping and going merry are angled towards the Bharati. Spotting a small boat traveling quickly towards them from the floating restaurant, the crew do their best to appear busy, except for Luffy who leans over the side of the ship studying the approaching vessel. After a few minutes, the boat reaches the going shopping and a pair of burly men scale the hull before pulling themselves onto the deck. One of the men shouts, "Who in the hell shot at us?" Pointing his thumbs at his chest, Luffy proudly declares, "That was me, sorry." The other crew members are shocked that Luffy willingly took the blame for something that was Full Body's fault and attempt to clarify the situation. Unfortunately, before they can speak, the large men grab Luffy by each arm and leap over the side. They land cleanly on the small boat far below, causing it to rock under the impact. The pair shove Luffy into a seat before picking up oars and rowing towards the Bharati. The ride is silent and Luffy chooses not to ask the angry-looking men any questions, fearing that doing so might worsen his situation. The boat docks with the floating restaurant and Luffy is greeted by a dozen irritated chefs. The young captain is lifted into the air and carried into the back of the restaurant. As they approach an office, Luffy hears a man yelling from inside, "Only has the entire waitstaff quit, but now there is a giant hole in the top of my ship." A calm voice responds, "Shit happens, old man, what do you plan on doing about it?" The smell of cigarette smoke hits Luffy's nostrils. The angry voice returns, "When I get a hold." He is cut off as the chefs pile into the office and Luffy is dropped into a chair facing a large desk. Looking at the chefs, the man behind the desk whose voice matches the angry one Luffy heard from the hallway shouts, "Who in the hell is this?" With a grin one of the chefs replies, "This is the jerk who tried to blow up a restaurant." Glaring at Luffy, the grisly-looking old man reaches across the table to grab him when a foot comes crashing down, pinning his wrist to the table. A young blonde man with his hands in his pockets, smoking a cigarette, holds the older man's arm in place with his foot while he says in the calmer voice Luffy had heard "Yay out Zeph." Glaring at the younger man, Zeph shouts, "Damn it Sanji, I should have tossed you out alongside our idiotic waitstaff. Then who would fix all the slop your cooks keep trying to feed our customers?" Sanji smirks as a vein pulses on Zeph's forehead. Freeing his arm, Zeph pulls it back across the table before rising to his feet, glaring at Sanji. The other chefs cautiously back out of the room, not wanting to get in the middle of the verbal altercation. Pointing a finger into Sanji's chest, the older chef shouts, "This is my restaurant and I'll serve whatever I want." Luffy clears his throat. "Luffy, can I go?" The two men turn their rage at the pirate and shout in unison, Hell no. The older man drops back into his chair and Sanji casually flicks the ashes from the tip of his cigarette before rising to his feet and exiting the room. As he leaves he calls over his shoulder, "Try not to make an ass of yourself, Zeph." As Sanji's footsteps fade, Zeph refocuses his attention on Luffy. He says in a frustrated voice, "Do you realize how much money you cost me with your little cannonball stunt?" The pirate captain shrugs his shoulders. 1,000 belly? Laughing, Zeph slaps the table with both hands. Wahahahaha. You're missing a couple of zeros there. Just to fix the hole I'd need at least 5 million belly, not to mention all of the lost revenue from customers who fled without paying. You got the money to pay me back? For a moment Luffy considers offering part of the money from Kaya. His mind flashes back to Orangetown and he remembers how protective Nami was over the crew's finances. Now that Kaya is in charge he wonders how much more protective she will be and hangs his head. I don't have anything. Nostrils flaring, Zeph says, "Guess you'll have to work it off then." Let's see, tipping his chair back he does some mental math. "I suppose if you worked as a chore boy for a year, we could call it even." Sounds great. Luffy grins as he leans forward, "But I can't do it for a year." He pauses, estimating how much time he is willing to spend here. "How about 4 days?" Zeph stands and angrily grabs Luffy by the shoulders, lifting him out of his seat. "How the hell do you think that would work? I was being generous by letting you off with just a year." Luffy laughs as he dangles from the chef's arms. She, I'm going to be the next pirate king. I can't waste my time here. How about 3 weeks? That's the longest I can promise." Throwing Luffy at the wall in frustration, Zeph shouts, "How dare you disrespect me and my restaurant?" Slamming into the walls and crumpling to the ground, Luffy takes note of the man's peg leg before looking up at the large man who has rounded the table and is now standing over him. He yells up defiantly, "Mark my words, I'll have earned enough to repay you in a week." In a rage, Zeph lifts his functioning foot and brings it down next to Luffy's head, smashing a hole through the floor. From below, several diners stare up at the hole in the ceiling. Grabbing Luffy by the collar, he tosses the boy through the hole, where he lands with a crash on the dining room floor. Jumping after the pirate captain, he lands on his good foot in the dining room. Looking around, Zeph spots Sanji, who several cooks are restraining while a customer in navy attire lays on the floor with blood pouring from his nose. His attention focused on Sanji, Zeph asks, "What in the hell happened here?" Slightly dazed, Luffy lifts his head. As his vision focuses he sees his crew standing to the side of the room. He waves at them and grins. "Hey, took you all long enough." Ignoring Luffy, Sanji yells back at Zeph, "He started it. This jerk tried to waste good food. I had to teach him a lesson." Zeph runs towards Sanji, his peg leg clicking with each step. "You little brat. How often have I told you not to start fights with the customers?" Reaching the place where Sanji is being restrained he pulls back his fist and slams it into Sanji's face, knocking the young cook to the ground. Once Sanji is dealt with, Zeph makes his way towards Full Body. He reaches down and picks the Marine up with both hands, but rather than setting him on his feet, the older chef tosses the Marine through the front door. As the confused Marine lands on the deck outside, Zeph shouts after him, "Stay out until you can learn not to waste my food." As Full Body's prone body holds the door open, a pair of Marines run up. Out of breath, the first begins to explain, "It's Jin. He escaped." As the final word escapes his lips the sound of a shotgun blast can be heard and the pair drop to the ground and slump over next to their lieutenant. Making his way towards the entrance, a man wearing a striped prison uniform and holding a shotgun over his shoulder steps over the fallen Marines and into the restaurant. He kicks Full Body as he passes by, eliciting a groan from the Marine. Righting the table that had fallen over in Sanji and Full Body's earlier skirmish, he pulls up a chair and sits down. Staring at the chefs he waits a moment before barking, "Who's going to bring me some food?" Picking himself off the ground, Full Body shouts, "What are you all standing around for? He's an escaped prisoner. Help me get him back on my ship." Nobody moves and the Marine follows up. "He's part of Don Krieg's crew. If word gets back to his captain about this restaurant, you are all screwed." His words again seemingly have no effect on the chefs or patrons and a bead of sweat rolls down Full Body's forehead. One of the larger chefs takes a step forward. On his chest is a name tag that identifies him as Patty. If he is in our restaurant, that makes him a customer. Stunned, Full Body looks at the other cooks for help. but instead of support they crack their knuckles and stare at him. Turning towards his ship, he begins running towards it. You're all lunatics, leaving his fallen companions behind. Pulling a notepad from his pocket, Patty makes his way to the table Jin is sitting at and asks with a smile, "What would you like to eat and how will you be paying for your meal tonight?" Jin looks up at the man. "I'll take whatever your most expensive meal is. As far as payment is concerned." He pumps the barrel of his shotgun. "I'll let you keep your life." Snatching the shotgun from his hands, Patty tosses it over his shoulder to the other chefs. He leans his muscular arms on the table. His face inches from Jin's. "Wrong answer, buddy. Want to try again?" A cold, hard stare remains plastered on Jin's face as he meets the chef's eyes. "I just need some food. I'm starving." "You wouldn't let a man die of hunger when you have a full kitchen, would you?" The two stare at one another. The rest of the dining room is silent as the other chefs and patrons wait to see the outcome of the confrontation. Grinning at the former prisoner, Patty grabs the chair he is sitting in and lifts it over his head with Jin still on it. Carrying him to the side door, he kicks it open with one foot and tosses the mane and chair onto a pile of garbage bags. He laughs to himself. "Da ha 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 ha, if you have no money, then I have to take you out with the rest of the trash." The other cooks laugh with Patty and join him as he returns to the kitchen, leaving Luffy, Sanji and Zeph behind. Zeph turns his attention back to Sanji. "I can't leave you alone for 5 minutes without having you start a fight. That's the final straw. You're waiting tables for the rest of the week." Springing to his feet, a fire in his eyes, Sanji shouts back, "You can't be serious, the kitchen is nothing without." "Enough." Zeph cuts the young chef off. "Do what you are told or get the hell off my ship, Sanji." Defeated but still angry, Sanji reaches into his pocket and pulls out a cigarette, lighting it as he walks out of the dining room. To Luffy, the older chef says roughly, "Chore boy, make sure that Krieg pirate finds his way off my ship. If I see him around here again, it'll be your ass." Zeph spins on his peg leg and stomps to the stairs, his wooden leg thumping against the ground with every other step. Making his way out to the side deck, Luffy finds Jin digging through a trash bag, looking for any discarded food to eat. Approaching him without caution, the young man shouts, "What are ya doing?" Embarrassed, Jin straightens up and turns to look at Luffy, studying him for a moment. "You don't look like a chef. Are you a customer?" Luffy sits down next to the pirate. "I wish. The food here looks amazing. But I'm just a chore boy, it's my first day on the job." Nodding slowly, Jin leans against the garbage bag. "A chore boy, eh? You look more like a pirate than a future chef. How did you end up here?" Luffy's eyes light up. "I am a pirate. Going to be the next pirate king." He sheepishly scratches his head. "Unfortunately I broke the restaurant, so I'm stuck until Zeph says I've paid off my debt." Pointing up at the damage he helped cause, Jin follows his finger toward the gaping hole in the roof. Before the pair can say more, the door to the kitchen opens up and a plate slides across the ground, stopping at Jin's feet. The plate contains a perfectly made seafood risotto dish, piled high with clams and shrimp. A trail of gray smoke wafts towards the pair and they hear footsteps approaching. Greedily, Luffy reaches for the plate. But Jin snatches it before the food is stolen and takes a bite of the meal, closing his eyes and savoring the flavor. The pirate swallows and clears his throat. "This is the best thing I've ever had." Crouching down in front of Jin, a smile spread across Sanji's face at the compliment. Jin continues to feed the chef's ego. The risotto is moist and delicate, while the shrimp are plump and tender. Whoever made this is a master chef. Luffy's mouth salivates as he listens to the description and the pirate captain again attempts to steal a bite. But the plate is pulled out of his reach before he can grab it. Sanji nods his head, "Glad somebody enjoys my cooking." Jin looks up inquisitively at Sanji, who answers his unspoken question. "The only thing I hate more than wasted food is seeing a man starve." Unable to resist any longer, Jin digs into the meal, shoveling the food into his mouth. Swallowing the last of the food, tears well up in his eyes and the pirate asks, "Who can I thank for saving me?" Taking a slow drag from his cigarette, Sanji blows a plume of smoke. "The name's Sanji and seeing someone enjoy my food is enough thanks for me." A forlorn crosses Luffy's face as he looks at the now empty plate. An idea pops into the young pirate's mind and looks excitedly to Sanji. "You're a chef, right?" Confused, Sanji raises his eyebrow at the boy. "Yes." Luffy begins bouncing as he thinks about the wonderful meals that Sanji could make. You should join my pirate crew. We need a chef and you are the kind of person I want." Glaring at the boy, Sanji snaps, "Not a chance. Zeph couldn't survive a day without me. There's no way I could join your crew." Luffy pouts as he crosses his arms. "No, I don't accept it. You will be my chef whether you like it or not." Rising to his feet, Sanji towers over the boy and shouts down at him, "What the hell do you mean you don't accept it? This is my life. You can't just tell me what to do." Jin interrupts the pair's argument. "Thank you, Sanji. This meal means everything to me. I thought I was going to die." Sanji's mood softens and he lowers himself back to a squatting position in front of the pair. Jin continues, "Full body was right. I am part of Don Krieg's crew. But he didn't tell you what tragedy led to my capture." A curious look crosses Sanji's face. "What do you mean tragedy? You're the largest crew in the East Blue. Rumor has it your commander has 50 captains and over 5,000 men in his fleet." Luffy's eyes grow wide. "Over 5,000 men? How is that even possible?" Jin nods his head in confirmation. "It's true. We thought we were unstoppable. When we left for the Grand Line we were so certain of ourselves. Until we ran into him." Shuddering, Jin stops as he recalls the horrific encounter. "A single man struck down our fleet. One ship after another. The few of us that managed to escape were the lucky ones." Luffy's mouth hangs open in shock. "One man defeated 5,000 pirates alone? I want to meet this guy." Jin looks at Luffy in disbelief, but before he can say anything Sanji interrupts. "You should get going before the other cooks find you." He points at a small boat that is tethered nearby. "Take that. Nobody will notice it's missing." Jin nods and stands up. Making his way to the boat he unties it from the barati and steps aboard. As the ship drifts away he waves to Sanji and Luffy, "I won't forget your kindness." Drawing another lungful of smoke, Sanji lets it out slowly before waving back. "I'll hold you to that. Jin, now get out of here." Turning to Luffy he tells the young pirate, "Come with me chore boy, there is plenty of work for you to do if you are going to pay off that debt." The pair make their way into the kitchen. When they arrive Luffy attempts to introduce himself to the chefs who mostly ignore him as they rush to and fro preparing food. Sanji excuses himself and heads into the dining room to wait tables. In frustration, Luffy yells, "What am I supposed to do?" One of the chefs points at the sink piled high with dishes and barks back, "Get cleaning." Making his way to the sink, Luffy turns on the hot water. Soon the kitchen is filled with the sound of plates smashing against the floor. Another chef runs to the sink and turns the water off before shouting at Luffy, "The hell are you doing?" Luffy shrugs, "Washing dishes, what's it look like?" Staring at the pile of washed and shattered dishes on the ground the chef looks back up at Luffy. Trembling with rage he points at the door. "Go! Get the hell out of the kitchen. Make yourself useful and take orders from the customers." Nodding enthusiastically, Luffy drops the plate in his hands and heads out the door. The chefs roll their eyes and several swear under their breath at the young pirate as he passes by. Scanning the dining room for Sanji, he eventually spots him at a corner booth waiting on a table that is populated by his crew. Rushing over he shouts, "Hey everybody." Grinning at the captain, Zoro purposefully knocks his mug of beer onto the ground. "Oops, I dropped my drink. Can you get me another one chore boy?" He says the title in a condescending tone. From across the table, Nami raises her water glass. "I could use some more water too while you are at it." The others laugh as Luffy becomes visibly irritated at the jokes. Luffy shouts angrily, "Knock it off." The others continue to laugh and Sanji turns to Luffy. He says with a wink, "Don't worry, I'll handle this table chore boy. You go ahead and serve the guests over there." He hands Luffy an extra notepad and pen before pointing at a table with an elderly man and woman who had just been seated. Luffy stomps over to the pair still irritated and begins to take their order. Sanji turns back to the rowdy table. "My apologies beautiful lady. Not only will I refill your water, but I'll have champagne brought out to you on the house." Nami bats her eyelashes at the chef flirtatiously. "Thank you, I'm so glad somebody here has manners." The chef turns his attention to Kaya. "And what would you like to drink? A woman is fair as you should not have to limit herself to just water?" Usopp glares at Sanji. "Hey, what do you tea?" An elbow to the gut cuts him off and redirects his anger at the pink-haired boy Besidos and whispers, "Don't get in the way of free drinks. Play our cards right and we might get even more of the meal covered." Nodding his head in understanding, Usopp smiles at Sanji, sorry about that. Blushing at the attention, Kaya takes a moment to regain her composure, sparkling mineral water is fine, thank you. Writing it down on his notepad, Sanji addresses the table, excellent, and have we decided on our orders? From the other end of the dining room, Luffy is frantically writing down every word that is said while the old man describes in great detail his wife and his first date. Raising his hand to catch Sanji's attention, Kobe points at several menu items. We would like the number 1, number 5, number 8 and number 13 for the table. Thank you. Sanji jots the order down. Will that be all? Kobe nods, for now. But would you mind leaving us a few menus? We might order dessert later. Smiling, Sanji begins collecting all of the menus other than the ones in front of Nami and Kaya. Certainly. The kitchen should have your meals out shortly. As the chef leaves the table, Zoro asks, Hey Rika, what's wrong? You look like a ripe tomato. The others turn to look at the young girl whose cheeks are bright pink as she stares at Sanji's retreating form. It takes her a few moments to realize somebody had said her name and she blinks several times as she tries to remember the question. Eventually, she says in an uncharacteristically nervous squeak, Our waiter is so sweet. With a dreamy smile, she drapes her arms across the table and rests her chin on top of her hands, continuing to stare after Sanji until he disappears through the door into the kitchen. Usopp grins mischievously, I think somebody has a little crush. Mouth wide, Rika's cheeks burn even brighter and she shouts, I do not, besides, he didn't even notice me. Pointing at Nami and Kaya, her anger boils up. He was too busy flirting with these two. Nami pulls a container of lipstick from her pocket, hoping to use it to help flirt her way toward more free food. I don't think he was flirting with us. He's just trying to get a big tip. Applying the lipstick, she carefully avoids making eye contact with the girl until she is finished. When she finally does look at Rika, the look she receives is murderous. Putting the lipstick away, she does her best to diffuse the tension. It's nothing, guys like him are all the same. He probably forgot I existed the moment he went into the kitchen. A moment later, Sanji returns with drinks and places the sparkling water in front of Kaya. Here you go, m'lady. Placing the champagne in front of Nami, he continues, and I didn't forget a drink for the most beautiful woman in the room. Shoving her chair back, Rika launches to her feet and rushes towards the bathroom, tears streaming down her face. Nami smiles up at Sanji, thank you, but I think I need to take care of something before I can enjoy this. Folding her napkin and placing it neatly on the table, she follows Rika into the bathroom to console her. After a few minutes, the girls return to the table, Rika now sporting an identical lipstick color to Nami's. After helping the girl back into her seat, Nami whispers something into Kaya's ear and the two girls rise to the fear and make their way towards the kitchen. They return several minutes later and rejoin the conversation at the table as they wait for their food. After a while, Sanji returns to the table, carefully balancing 5 trays. He places 4 in a circle around the center of the table. Pulling back the lids, he explains each dish. As the others begin scooping food onto their plates, he rounds the table to Rika and places the smallest dish in front of her. Crouching next to the girl, he lifts the lid, revealing a rice ball wrapped in seaweed. I'm so sorry that I didn't take the time to properly recognize what a beautiful young lady you are. I hope this can make up for my mistake. Flattered, Rika flutters her eyelashes at Sanji. She tries to speak, but the butterflies in her stomach prevent her from making any noise, so instead she smiles at the chef. He rises to his feet and pats her on the head, before heading to another table to take their order. From the other side of the table, Johnny leans towards Yosaku and says quietly, Yo, what the heck was that all about? Yosaku shrugs, it beats me bro, but we got free food out of it. The rest of the meal is relatively uneventful and Sanji brings the checkbook to the table. The crew awkwardly passes it around until it lands in front of Kaya, who quickly opens it, places a 50,000 berry note into the envelope and hands it back to the chef. As the crew rises from the table, Luffy makes his way over to see them off. Seeing the captain approach, Zoro asks, Are we ready to take off? Or is there still more work you need to do? With a forlorn look, Luffy says dejectedly, Zeph said I've got to work here for a year. The group is in shock and Usopp sputters, What are we supposed to do for a year? Dejected, Luffy traces a circle with his foot. I don't know, wait in the boat I guess? A thought occurs to Rika. What if I helped? I used to be a waitress at my mom's restaurant back in Shellstown. Maybe if I volunteer then you won't have to work for as long. Luffy's eyes widen. You do that for me, Rika? Ninjin raises his hand tentatively. I've got some experience as well. Not as much as Rika, but I could help too. Excited, Luffy begins bouncing back and forth. That's awesome. Come with me. I'll take you to Zeph and see what he says. The three race off for the offices, leaving the others dumbfounded. Kobe breaks the silence. Do you think we should all volunteer? Usopp scoffs. Not a chance. Luffy got himself into this mess. He can get himself out of it. The others nod in agreement, feeling a twinge of guilt but not wanting to waste their time waiting tables. As they grapple with the idea of being stuck here for a prolonged period, they make their way back to the ships. On the way out of the dining room, Kobe stops briefly to disrobe the fallen Marines, deciding to embrace his rebellious side and keep the outfits for himself. In Zeph's office, another heated argument is going on. The older man's voice rings out clearly. I heard what that straw hat wearing pirate asked. You should join his crew, Sanji. Find the all blue like we always dreamed of. I'm too old, but you still have time to see it through. Angry at the older man, Sanji shouts back, what about you? Who's going to take care of this place when you finally kick the bucket? Do you think I can just abandon everything we built together to chase after some silly dream? Zeph raises his voice. How dare you call it silly? You and I both know it's out there somewhere. A sea where fish from the north, south, east and west blue all come together. The true dream of any chef. The pair are interrupted by knocking at the door. Walking over to it, Sanji throws the door open and storms out of the office towards the kitchen, slamming his shoulder into Luffy as he passes by the pirate captain. Once the coast is clear, Luffy, Rika and Ninjin make their way in. Still worked up from his argument with Sanji, Zeph looks down at the children in confusion. What now, chore boy? Luffy waves his hands at the pair and says proudly, a couple of my crewmates are volunteering to help me work off my debt. Scrunching his brow, Zeph stares at the kids for a few more moments, but they're just kids. What use does a restaurant have for a couple of kids? Angrily, Rika puts her hands on her hips and shouts, hey, I may be young but I used to be the head waitress at my mom's restaurant back in Shellstown. Zeph thinks for a minute, what could it hurt? As long as they are willing, we can use the extra help. He addresses the chill about this. If you two are willing to help out, I could knock half a year off the chore boy's debt. He pauses, running his finger through his long mustache. I need you both to be all in. The pair nod and say in unison, yes sir. Shrugging his shoulders, Zeph looks back at Luffy. I don't know where you got these kids, but if they are willing to do this for you then I'm not going to fight it. But I still need you here for half a year, understand chore boy? Luffy smiles and reaches his hand out to shake the chef's. We'll see old man. Rolling his eyes, Zeph grasps and shakes Luffy's hand roughly. Sure, we'll see. Laughing, the trio make their way back to the dining room and begin waiting tables. Eventually, the last few customers receive their meals and after finishing them make their way off of the boat. The cooks along with the three new waitstaff head to the Baraties' cabins to sleep. As the first full day of Luffy's work on the Baratie begins, the crew dines together on the restaurant's second level. That morning, Kaya met with Zeph and struck a deal for free food in exchange for Pieman and Tamanegi busing tables after breakfast and dinner rush. There is a sense of emptiness at the table as the crew watches Luffy, Kaya and Tamanegi taking orders. Jokes from the night before have been replaced with acceptance of their captain's choice and they each try to make the best of the current situation. After he finishes bussing tables after breakfast, Pieman is presented with a hand-wrapped gift from Mary. Inside the packaging is a tape measure, hammer, nails, chisel and carving knife. Bringing him down to the basement level, the lamb-faced man unveils a workbench and a large pile of wood that had previously been stored under a tarp in case either of the ships needed repairs. Sitting beside one another at the table, Mary carefully demonstrates how to use the carving knife to carve a bird from a piece of lumber while the young boy watches and copies his movements. Aboard the Baratie, Kaya discovers a gift shop and after comparing the inventory against her notebook, decides to make some strategic bulk purchases, knowing that she will likely be able to flip them once the crew reaches one of the wealthier towns. She purchases 1,600 sets of Baratie branded plates, silverware, and cups for 4 million belly, 2,000 Baratie branded t-shirts for 1,500,000 belly, 1,600 Bharati branded sweatshirts for 2 million belly and 1,600 signed Bharati cookbooks for 2,500,000 belly. Once she has finished placing the order, the nervous man behind the register calls up 2 chefs who help load the goods onto the going shopping. Kaya busies herself opening the port wall of the trade goods storage room and rolls out a long gangplank so the burly cooks can carry the merchandise directly into the ship. The rest of the crew decide to stay on their ships between meals, training and passing the time together. Other than during meals, Johnny and Yosaku stand guard with Johnny stand guard aboard the going shopping, preventing drunk or belligerent guests from accidentally boarding the ships. By dinner, the crew is restless and decides to pester Luffy, trying to convince him to skip out on his commitment to Zeph so that they can get back on the sea. He does his best to ignore them but gets fed up and screams at Zoro, "I can't just walk away from my responsibilities." Launching out of his seat, Zoro bellows, "The only person forcing you to stay here is you. You're a pirate, Luffy. Just tell the geezer who runs this place to shove it so we can get out of here." Luffy pulls his arm back to hit the swordsman, but his elbow is caught by Sanji who drags him to the kitchen. "Knock it off, chore boy. You're freaking out the other guests." The day ends similarly to the last, with the crew departing to the ship and the 3 waiters joining the cooks in the Berardi's cabins. The next 2 days are equally uneventful. Mary continues to teach Tamanegi basic woodworking skills while the rest of the crew passes the time on the ships or explores the restaurant. Tamanegi gets the idea to break up the monotony by interviewing all of the crew members and takes careful notes as he fills out a detailed logbook that covers the crew's time in Shell's Town, Orangetown and Syrup Village. Unfortunately, the novelty of the interviews is short-lived and the crew returns to the monotony of waiting for their captain to get tired of his commitment and abandon the restaurant to take them on their next adventure. By breakfast on the 4th day, Zoro has hit his boiling point. He shouts across the dining room at Luffy, "Do you seriously expect us to spend the next half-year waiting around in this restaurant for you, Straw Hat?" Luffy stomps towards Zoro. He takes a deep breath and prepares to shout back when the dining room door is thrown open and Jin enters, carrying a large man. His eyes dart around as he looks for help until they land on Sanji. Jin waves his free hand to get his friend's attention. "Please, he needs food. Take pity on him, like you did on me." Moving between Sanji and Jin, Patty extends his thick arm to the side to block the blonde-haired cook from passing. "Like hell. That's Don Krieg. We would never help a monster like him." The patrons of the restaurant gasp at the name and stop eating. In one corner of the room, a man wearing a green and white checkered shirt yells, "Fire!" before the audible snap of a picture is heard. Several more cooks rush out of the kitchen and take positions on either side of Patty. Carefully lifting his head, revealing his gaunt face and sunken cheeks, Don Krieg manages to whimper, "Please, I swear I won't hurt any of you if you just give me something to eat." The effort of his words is too much for his starved body and his head again droops towards his chest. Unnoticed by the other cooks, Sanji retreats into the kitchen. Laughing, another of the chefs with a name tag reading Carne points at Don Krieg and says in a booming voice, "Do you think we're stupid? You are the most despicable pirate in the East Blue?" Spotting a newspaper draped over a chair, he walks over, picks it up and holds it out toward the starving pirate. "There is an article right here on the front page of the paper about how you annihilated a rival crew by flying under a white flag and attacking when they tried to give you aid. I know Zeph says anybody who comes through those doors is a customer, but even he'd agree that a monster like you deserves to starve." The other chefs nod in agreement as the door to the kitchen opens behind them. Stepping through the gap left by Carne's absences, the chefs fail to spot the plate held in Sanji's hand until it has been delivered to Don Krieg. Eyes watering, Jin says quietly to the cook, "Thank you." Taking a step back, Sanji turns to the other chefs. "What is wrong with all of you? This is a restaurant and you are chefs. When people come here we feed them, it doesn't matter who they are." Greedily shoveling down the food, Don Krieg attempts to finish the plate as quickly as possible, knowing he may not have long to do so. Patty angrily shouts, "Use your brain, Sanji. This is Don Krieg. What if he attacks us once he's done eating?" A vein pulsing on his forehead, Sanji yells, "Then we'll do the same thing we do every." He feels a searing pain in his back as his body slams into the ground. Don Krieg places his foot onto the young chef's back, pinning him to the floor and leers at the other chefs as a crooked smile splits his face. Jin drops to the ground beside his friend before looking up angrily at his captain. Why Don Krieg? You promised you wouldn't hurt them. Not bothering to look down at his subordinate, Don Krieg shrugs his massive shoulder. I changed my mind. So who's in charge of this dump? The familiar clunk of Zeph's peg leg can be heard as he descends the stairs and enters the dining room. The older chef bellow, that'd be me. Why are you asking? Turning his attention to the newcomer, Don Krieg's eyes widen in recognition as soon as he sees Zeph. Spotting the wooden leg, he begins to laugh. Wahahahahaha. If it isn't red leg Zeph. Or is it peg leg Zeph now? Rumor was that you died a few years ago. What are you doing out here? Glaring at the pirate, Zeph folds his arms across his chest. That's none of your concern. Now get your foot off my chef's back and talk to me like a man. The camera from earlier flashes again, before vanishing from sight underneath the table. Ignoring the photographer, Don Krieg removes his foot from Sanji's back. He grins again before delivering a kick to the chef's side, sending him flying through the air and into Patty's arms. As embarrassed to be seen holding Sanji as Sanji is to be held, Patty stands the chef up and the pair separate. Trying to calm his nerves, Sanju of his pocket and lights the tip, placing it between his lips. Jin rises to his feet, struggling with the tension between showing loyalty to his captain and loyalty to his friend. Damn it, Krieg. Why do you have to make things so complicated? Not used to being ignored, Zeph angrily shouts, you wanted the man in charge, I'm right here. What do you want? Opening his arms wide, the pirate flashes a toothy smile. I want this. All of it. Your ship, your food. I'd probably even take a couple of your chefs. Eyes narrowing, he points the index finger of his right hand at Zeph. I'll take your logbook as well. Zeph scoffs. What makes you think I'd just hand that over? Besides, what good would it do you to have it? Don Krieg drops his hand and allows his vision to slowly pan across the dining room as he begins laughing maniacally. Wahahahahahaha, because I'll kill everyone in here if you don't give me what I want. As for what I do with your logbook, I need information about the Grand Line. I tried and failed to take the Grand Line a month ago. It took less than 7 days for my entire fleet to be defeated because we lack the one thing your book has, intel. Once I get my hands on your logbook, I'll finally be able to take my rightful place as the king of the pirates. Luffy begins laughing from the far side of the room, she, as if, how can you be king of the pirates when that's my dream? Confused, Don Krieg looks around until he spots Luffy, who has begun to walk towards him. You? A runt like you thinks he has what it takes to be the king of the pirates? You must be delusional. Snapped out of their shock by Luffy's actions, Patty rushes to a cabinet and unlatches it. He quickly pulls it open to reveal a hoard of weapons. The other cooks charge towards him and grab various weapons before turning to face Don Krieg. Patty picks up a bazooka and swings it over his shoulder. Who are you calling a runt, Krieg? He glances to the side and notices that Luffy has gotten dangerously close to the pirate captain. Stay back, chore boy. This is our fight. Freezing in place, Luffy grabs a chair and plants himself on it, accepting Patty's request to let the chefs protect their restaurant. Patty aims his bazooka at the pirate and pulls the trigger as customers dive out of the way of the airborne projectile. The explosive shell connects with Don Krieg's chest and explodes, but the pirate stands still, seemingly unaffected by the blast. As the smoke and heat dissipate, he is revealed to be wearing golden armor underneath his rags. Grinning at the chef, he reaches into his pockets and pulls out a pair of pistols. The movement exposes a half-dozen gun barrels that poke out from both sides of his armor. Squeezing the triggers causes a hail of bullets to fly from both the guns in his hands and those sticking out of his armor toward the chefs who attempt to dodge out of the way. Several of the chefs are struck and fall bleeding to the ground. From near the stairs, Zeph's voice roars, "Enough! Spare my chefs and I'll do anything. Name your price, Krieg." Don Krieg holsters his guns. I need 100 meals. The men on my ship are in bad shape. Give me that and I'll think about letting your precious cooks keep their lives. Zeph shifts his attention to the chefs still standing and barks, "What are you waiting for? 100 meals aren't going to cook themselves." Obediently they file into the kitchen and begin preparing the food. The old man's gaze locks onto Don Krieg. "I'm still not handing over my ship or logbook." Smirking to himself, Don Krieg responds, "I would expect nothing less from Redfoot, Zeph. How about this, when my men are full, we'll take what we want by force, until then you can do whatever you want with this place." A few moments later, The chefs exit the kitchen carrying a heavy bag between them. Walking it over to Don Krieg, they drop it at his feet before retreating to care for their wounded friends. Grabbing the bag and tossing it over his shoulder, Don Krieg turns to leave. "I'll be back. I hope for your sake that you've had a change of heart, Zeph." Walking through the door, Jin follows him like a shadow, still uncertain of where his loyalties stand. Aboard the Going Shopping, Nami stands on the deck, gripping Arlong's wanted poster tightly in her right fist. She had made a difficult decision the night before and chosen to skip breakfast to follow it through. Two pairs of footsteps approach her, but she pays them little mind until Johnny calls out, "Yo, big sis, what ya still doing on the boat? We were just doing a last-minute sweep before we headed in for some grub." Closing her eyes, Nami prepares herself as the men flank her on either side. With her left hand, she reaches into her pouch and pulls out the sections of her bow staff. Not bothering to snap them together, she slams the sticks into Yosaku's groin, causing him to drop to the ground. Jumping backward, she quickly snaps the three pieces together before bringing the stick crashing down on Johnny's head before he realizes what is happening. Facing Yosaku, who is still clutching his nether region, she slams the bow staff into the side of his face, knocking him to the ground next to his friend unconscious. Dropping her weapon onto the deck, she reaches into her pouch and pulls out a rope. Quickly tying the pair up, she retrieves and disassembles her staff before returning it to the pouch around her waist. Nami wastes no time, knowing she has at most an hour before the first crew members return from their meal, and heads down to the finance office. Grabbing an empty bag off a shelf, she hurries to the safe. Retrieving the key she had lifted from Kaya's pocket that morning, she places it into the lock and dials in the code. Throwing the heavy door open, she sweeps the piles of neatly stacked bills into the sack before unlocking the smaller container and adding its contents to her loot. She doesn't bother to close the safe door as she dashes back to the main deck. Slowly coming to his senses, Johnny tries to figure out what has happened. He attempts to stand, but the rope's resistance holds him in place. His vision is foggy, but he makes out a blurry movement in front of him and slurs out, "H, help me." Nami bites her lip before responding, "Sorry Johnny, not this time." She dashes across the gangplank and onto the Going Merry. Picking up a hand saw she had hidden under the lip of the railing, she begins cutting through the wooden supports holding the gangplank in place. She cuts through them in under a minute and tosses the now detached punk off the side of the ship, letting it slap against the side of the Going Shopping, still tied in place on that side. Dropping the saw, she rushes into the galley, placing Arlong's wanted poster onto the ground. She tosses the bag of money on top of it before grabbing hold of the whipstaff and adjusting the boats heading towards the Konami Islands. Back in the dining room, the chefs are busily clearing tables. Most guests have already left or are in the process of leaving. As they clear off tables next to one another, Patty shouts to Sanji, "Bet you're real proud of yourself now, huh? First, you fed Jin, then Don Krieg. Do you have a death wish, boy? A guy like you would never understand." Sanji continues to stack dishes on the table he is clearing. Dropping his stack of plates loudly onto the table, Patty turns to face Sanji as his volume increases. "Understand what? That you know better than us? Those pirates will destroy everything Zeph built and it's all your fault." Zeph appears in front of the pair. Slamming his hands on Patty's table, he barks, "He means you don't understand what it's like to starve. None of you do. Not like Sanji." The other chefs turn to look at Zeph. Patty stammers out an apology, "I didn't mean anything by it." Eyes shifting towards Sanji, who continues, "FF says in a calmer voice, it's true what Krieg said. I used to be a pirate captain and a damn good one at that. 10 years ago, I was here in the East Blue, taking some well-deserved downtime when we happened across a cruise ship. We thought it would be an easy score and boarded it." He sighs and grabs a chair, dropping into it with a thud. "There was a boy on that ship, working in the kitchen. Sweet kid, couldn't have been much older than 9 at the time, was a lot like me when I was his age." A smile spreads across Sanji's face as he stacks the final plate onto his stack before moving on to another table. "Unfortunately, a big storm came that night. I don't know what happened to my crew or the other passengers, but the boy and I made it to shore on an island." The cooks circle Zeph, pulling up chairs and leaning in as they listen to his story. "Once there, I split the only food I had managed to save, some cheese and bread, and gave a portion to the boy. We decided to stay on opposite ends of the island, that way we could look out for any approaching ships. I figured that would give us the best chance of being rescued. Every day the food supply got lower until only crumbs remained. After 75 days on that island, the boy ran out of food. He went looking for me as a last-ditch effort to find something to eat. I didn't have the strength or willpower to fight back when he stole my supplies. It didn't take him long to realize that the bag I had kept with me was filled with treasure instead of food. The truth is, I gave all my food to the kid on our first day. He laughs and shakes his head, "Da ha ha ha. I thought it was better to keep my treasure with me than food." The old man gestures at his peg leg. "Luckily I found something to eat when I got desperate." Several chefs shudder at the implication before Zeph continues. "It was another 10 days before we finally got off that island and he's been by my side ever since, isn't that right, Sanji?" Stopping his work on the current table, Sanji looks up. "Sounds about right, 10 years putting up with this stubborn old bastard. Probably would have been easier to die on that island." Zeph addresses Patty directly. That is why Sanji cannot stand to see those pirates starve. Even ones like Don Krieg. The chefs nod in understanding. He turns his attention to the rest of the group. "If any of you want to leave, now is the time to go." He pauses and smiles when none of the chefs move. "Good. If you are staying, then get ready for war. Krieg isn't going down without a fight." Sanji nods and echoes the sentiment. "We did our job as cooks. Now that they are fed, it's time to kill those pirates." The chefs cheer and rise back to their feet. Flipping the now cleared tables onto their sides, they press them against the windows, shielding the interior of the dining room before latching the doors. A loud crash is heard outside. The cooks, alongside the few remaining guests, rush to the windows, peering around the tables to see what is happening. Feeling confident in his strength, Luffy saunters to the door and unlocks it. Swing it open, his jaw drops open as he sees the top half of the Krieg pirates' ship sliding into the ocean while the pirates aboard dive off the deck into the cold water below. Beyond the massive warship, a tall man riding on what appears to be a coffin returns an ornate black sword to the sheath onto his back. The rest of the crew join Luffy at the door, and upon seeing the swordsman, Kobe's eyes grow wide and he stammers, that's, it's Mihawk." Zoro looks across at the boy. Zoro says in a serious tone, "Are you certain it's him?" Kobe nods as he stutters, "And not a doubt in my mind. It's the warlord Dracula Mihawk." Shoving past the others onto the deck, Zoro's eyes lock on the approaching boat as everything around him fades away. He says in a cold voice, "Good." Kobe taps on Luffy's shoulder, having recovered enough to speak clearly. "We have to get out of here, Captain. That's Dracula Mihawk, one of the 7 warlords of the sea." Luffy doesn't visibly react to Kobe, his focus captured by Zoro. "Do whatever you want, I want to see what happens." Realizing that time is not on their side, Kobe exits through the door and takes several steps toward their ships before freezing in place. He points at the place they are anchored and shouts, "What happened to the Going Merry?" The question is enough to get Luffy's attention and he turns to follow Kobe's finger. Seeing the Going Shopping without the Going Merry, his mind races. Did the crew only dock one of the ships this morning? No. I saw them both arrive. Did they not tie it to the dock? It can't be that, otherwise, the Going Shopping would also be missing. So what happened to my ship? Looking back at the crew, he searches their faces for an answer. It takes him a moment to notice the missing member. Cocking his head to the side, the pirate captain asks, "Where's Nami?" Kobe tries to remember. She said she wasn't feeling well this morning. Nodding her head, Kaya elaborates, "I asked if she needed medicine, but she said it was fine and she would try to sleep it off." Mary follows up, trying to be helpful. Maybe she felt better and wanted to get some practice at the helm? The words felt wrong as they came out of his mouth, but it was the only explanation he could think of. An idea strikes the sheep-faced man. Johnny and Yosaku were keeping watch from the Going Shopping. Maybe they know what happened. Luffy nods his head. "Good idea, Mary." Turning to the ships, he dashes towards them, followed by the rest of the crew, leaving Zoro behind. Once aboard the boat, the crew spots the ship guards tied together. Untying them, Kobe and Usopp help the pair to their feet. Embarrassed at the situation, Johnny tries to explain, "We was watching the ships." Yosaku cuts him off. "We saw Nami, she was looking real down, Captain." Johnny jumps back in. "We went over to her, tried to cheer her up, ya know?" A blush runs up Yosaku's neck. All of a sudden she's hitting us with that stick of hers. He chooses not to bring up the first blow to his privates, almost knocked my teeth out and got a good one on Johnny too. Johnny nods his head and points at the lump on the top of his skull as proof. Next thing we knew, we were tied up out here. Luffy cuts to the chase. So you don't know what happened to the Going Merry? What do you mean what happened to her? She's right. Yosaku points to where the Merry was docked and stops mid-sentence as his pupils dilate. Realization sets in for Johnny. She was in a bad way, Captain. Had one of our old wanted posters in her hand. You think she might try going after a bounty? A horrible thought goes through Kaya's mind and she sticks her hand into her pocket feeling around. Coming up empty, she says quietly, "Oh no." Not hearing Kaya, Luffy responds to Johnny's question. Maybe, she hates most pirates. Might have been trying to cash in on a bounty to raise the 100 million belly she's always talking about. Kaya says a little louder, "Captain, we have a problem." Confused, Luffy shifts his attention to the older girl. "What do you mean? What problem?" Biting her lower lip, Kaya admits, "I can't find the keys to the safe." Shaking his head, Luffy responds, "What's a safe have to do with Nami? We can deal with that later. First, we need to figure out what the safe that all of our treasure is in." Kaya cuts off the captain. She continues much louder, "We have over 15 million belly in there. I thought I could trust Nami, so I showed her how to work the safe a few days ago." Seeing the blank expression on the captain's face, she continues, "Luffy, I think she stole it." Luffy angrily shouts back, "No, she wouldn't hurt of our crew. She wouldn't betray us like that." Turning to the others, he gestures, "Come on. You all know Nami. She wouldn't do this. She's been honest about everything since we left Orangetown. We trust Nami." Rika kicks the deck nervously with her feet. She hasn't been honest about everything, Luffy. The group turns to the young girl, with confusion painting their faces. Internally struggling between keeping Nami's secret and telling the crew. Rika blurts out, "I saw something a couple of weeks ago." Dropping down to her knees next to the girl, Kaya puts a comforting arm around her shoulders. "What did you see, sweetie?" Rolling up her left sleeve, she points to the spot where Nami had her tattoo. "It was here. A tattoo I saw one time when she was getting change. She told me it was for some fish company back in her hometown." A suspicion gnaws on Johnny's subconscious and he asks, "A tattoo of a fish company? What did it look like?" Rika pictures the tattoo in her mind as she describes it. It was a fish that was curled up, had a long nose that looks like a saw. Pulling a stack of wanted posters from his coat pocket, Yosaku digs through them until he finds what he is looking for. Handing one that features a fishman named Chu, he points at his right arm. "Did it look like this?" Rika nods enthusiastically. "Exactly like that. Maybe he worked for the fish company? Do you think he can help us find Nami?" Looking at one another, Yosaku takes the poster back from the girl and adds it to the others before sliding them back into his coat. As he is doing so, Johnny explains, "I know where Nami is headed, but that tattoo." "I don't care what the tattoo means." Luffy cuts the former bounty off. He is still confused, but focused on retrieving his crewmate. "If we know where Nami is, then we can get her back." "It's more than just a tattoo, Captain." Yosaku worries about how the captain will take the news he is about to deliver. It marks her as a member of the Arlong Pirates. Luffy was about to cut him off again, but his mouth snapped shut as his eyes dart between Johnny and Yosaku, trying to figure out if they were telling him the truth. The former bounty hunter continues, "This is bad, Luffy. Arlong isn't just a pirate, he's a human trafficker." His conviction about Nami bubbles inside him as Luffy shouts stubbornly, "I don't care. She's part of my crew now." From the deck below they hear Zoro's voice call out, "Dracule Mahawk. I challenge you to a duel, for the title of world's strongest swordsman." Not wanting to miss the fight about to begin below, Luffy thinks fast, "Take this ship and go find Nami. Zoro and I will catch up once we finish with Mahawk and the Krieg pirates." Most of the crew scatter and begin preparing the ship to launch, leaving Kobe and Rika standing in front of their captain. He looks in confusion at the pair. "What are you waiting for? I gave you an order." Still terrified of Mahawk, but even more scared of what the captain will do if left alone, Kobe swallows the lump that had formed in his throat. "You aren't staying without backup. We may not be as strong as you and Zoro, but the two of us can hold our own." Rika nods in agreement as she puts on her bravest face. A smile spreads across Luffy's face. "There's no talking you two out of it?" The pair shake their heads. "No, fine. grab your weapons and meet me on the Barati." The pair nod and sprint for the armory as Luffy descends the gangplank. In the commotion, none of the crew noticed a short man wearing a green and white checkered shirt with a camera strapped around his neck board the ship. He makes his way to the observation deck to lay low until they depart. Down on the deck of the Barati, Zoro waits for the answer to his challenge as the man riding the coffin-shaped ship approaches the dock. Stepping from his floating coffin onto the wooden landing, the hawk reaches for his necklace and pulls out a small dagger. Challenge accepted. Zoro places Wado Ichimonji into his mouth before drawing his other two blades. Dropping into his traditional three-sword stance, he says, "You need to take me seriously if you want to survive. Put that toy away." Chuckling to himself, Dracule Mihawk shifts into a defensive position, dagger held loosely in his right hand. "Kukukukuku, I don't hunt rabbits with a cannon." Furious, Zoro levels his blades in front of his body and begins spinning them in a circle, picking up speed with each rotation until the blades are spinning fast enough to blow air away from his body. Landing on the ground between the swordsman and the restaurant, Luffy lets out an excited cheer. "Yeah, you show him, Zoro." Ignoring his captain, Zoro runs towards Mihawk, three-sword style ultimate technique. 3,000 worlds. As he makes contact with and passes by the swordsman, the sound of steel striking steel rings across the deck. Skidding to a stop, he allows the blades to rest at his sides as he turns to face Mihawk. He assesses the damage done and to his surprise, there isn't a single scratch on the older swordsman. Placing the knife between his teeth, Mihawk picks at a small gap before saying in a bored voice, "Is that all you've got?" Glaring back, Zoro roars, "Not even close." He charged at Mihawk, swinging his three blades. Each attack is met by the knife, which deflects the swords before they can connect. As the battle rages on, Luffy is joined by Rika and Kobe, who stare fascinated at the union of Zoro's ferocity and Mihawk's skill. As Zoro attempts to slash Mihawk diagonally with both blades, Mihawk intercepts the attacks at the point where the blades cross with his dagger. Leaning forward, he pushes his tiny blade against the larger ones, easily tossing Zoro backward. The green-haired swordsman stabs his swords into the ground, dragging them across the deck to slow his momentum. As Mihawk makes eye contact with his opponent, he says in a calm voice, "You're strong, but fighting is about more than just strength." With a furious roar, Zoro charges towards Mihawk. He fails to notice the swordsman's subtle movement until he feels the sting of the dagger plunged into his chest. Looking down at the tiny weapon, he is warned by Mihawk, "Retreat if you want to keep your life." Zoro's eyes run from the dagger, up the swordsman's arm and to his face before he settles his focus on the man's eerie golden eyes. Yanking backward, he pulls the dagger from his chest and shouts, "If I give up now, it will be my dream that dies instead of me." Mihawk studies the green-haired swordsman for a moment. He had more resolve than expected. "You are either brave or dumb. Either way, you have earned this honor." Sliding the dagger back into its sheath on his necklace, he reaches behind his back and draws his sword. The blade is so dark it appears to drain light from the air around it, and its hilt is embedded with gems. Zoro grips the handles of his blades tightly. "Finally, we can both start taking this seriously." Rushing at the swordsman, Zoro swings the katana in both hands to the left as the sword in his mouth is aimed to the right, attempting to trap Mihawk between them. He brings his large blade down onto the swords held in the younger swordsman's hands. A few moments later, they hear the popping of steel as cracks run down each blade from tip to hilt. Demonstrating his mastery, Mihawk blows a small puff of air at the swords a moment before they shatter in Zoro's hands, flinging shards of steel in all directions. Taking a step back, Mihawk's golden eyes remained locked on Zoro, watching for his reaction. Pulling the blade from his mouth, Zoro stands again to face his opponent. Mihawk decides to give the man one final test. "You are defeated. Why do you still stand against me?" Zoro sheathes his sword and stretches his arms to either side, ready to assignity and honor. "I could never walk away from a fight I started. Scars on the back are a swordsman's greatest shame." Smirking, the warlord raises his sword. Truer words have never been said. Bringing his blade down diagonally across Zoro's chest, he swings it clear of his body before following up with an upward diagonal strike across the other side, leaving a large X-shaped wound. Falling in what feels like slow motion, Zoro remains conscious as his back hits the deck. Luffy, Rika and Kobe rush to their friend's side to see if he is still alive. Hawkeye's voice carries across the deck, "You're strong, but you still have a lot to learn. I will keep my title as the world's strongest swordsman for now. Hone your skills and seek me out when ready for a rematch." Hearing the shouting, Johnny and Yosaku race to join the others at Zoro's side. Johnny turns to the captain. "Big bro, Zoro needs a doctor. You'll have to finish things here without I am." Nodding, Luffy turns to Rika and Kobe. "Good thing you two decided to stay." Picking Zoro up, Johnny and Yosaku carry up onto the ship where they are met by Mary and Kaya, who lead them to one of the empty bedrooms where they lay the swordsman down to recover. The boat departs with Zoro safely aboard, heading towards the Konami Islands. Turning to the Krieg pirates, Mihawk briefly considers finishing them but decides against it. He had already gotten his entertainment from defeating the green-haired swordsman and was ready for a nice long nap. Making his way to the coffin-shaped boat, he steps aboard and slowly drifts away from the dock, making his way back to the Grand Line. Filing back into the dining room, Luffy, Kobe and Rika spot Zeph and make a beeline towards him. Seeing them approach, a surprised look comes across the older chef. "I thought you would have taken off with the rest of your crew. What are you still doing here, chore boy?" Luffy grins at the older man. "I still have a debt to pay off and I think I have an idea of how to do it. If me and my two crewmates help you deal with the Krieg pirates, can we call it even?" Zeph pauses for a moment. He hadn't seen the boy put up a fight against him, but his crewmate had just gone toe-to-toe with Mihawk and survived. He makes up his mind, if you can help us survive against Don Krieg, all debts will be forgiven. The straw hat wearing boy laughs. She. I can't wait to punch him in his stupid face." The older chef sighs, wondering what he had signed up for with this impulsive brat. As the chefs prepare for battle with the Don Krieg pirates, Luffy's energy and excitement build. Bouncing from person to person, he peppers them with questions as they do their best to ignore the foolhardy youngster. To the first chef he asks, "What are those?" But he is waved away. The next he asks, "Can I see?" But a glare is all he receives as a reply. To another, "That's so cool, can I try it out?" The chef doesn't even bother to look up as he puts together his spear. Seeing the disturbance the captain is making, Kobe walks to the reception desk and bends down in search of something. Finding what he was looking for, he jogs over to Luffy and slaps a piece of paper and crayons onto the table. "Captain, I found some tools to help you strategize." "That's so cool, you sure are smart, Kobe." Luffy grabs a chair and sits down in front of the writing instruments. As he picks through the crayons, he sees that the paper has an outline of one of the chefs on it. Scanning the room, Luffy locates the chef illustrated on the page and focuses on the axe he is assembling. He carefully draws the weapon on the paper, looking up occasionally for reference. Taking note of Zeph's silence and deciding to take charge, Sanji bellows, "Somebody needs to raise the fins." Having nothing better to do, Rika volunteers. "Yes, chef." She had watched the other chefs raise the fins previous nights after the restaurant closed and scampers to the cockpit to make the necessary adjustments. "Anything else we can do to help, Sanji?" asks Kobe as he strolls over to the older chef. Placing a cigarette into his mouth and striking a match, Sanji inhales deeply before blowing out a ring of smoke. "Nothing comes to mind, kid." Having missed the earlier conversation between Luffy and Zeph, he furrows his brows. "Why are you down here? Passengers are supposed to be hiding in the upper dining rooms." Swinging the club he was holding over his shoulder, the boy grins. "Somebody has to keep Luffy out of trouble." "Good point." The chef draws in another lungful of smoke. Suddenly there is a loud banging on the door, startling Sanji. He coughs several times, letting out streams of smoke through his nostrils as he attempts to recover. An unfamiliar voice calls out, "Come on out, chefs. It's time to meet your maker." A chorus of laughter can be heard from outside the door as whoever is speaking on the other side jiggles the locked knob, trying to open it. Kobe directs his attention at Sanji. Upon seeing him still recovering from his coughing fit, he gulps. Several competing thoughts raced through his head. "This is too soon. We aren't ready yet. Who's in charge? Somebody has to be in charge." The final thought wins out, and realizing that nobody else is taking charge, he decides to fill the void. Clearing his throat, he cups his empty hand beside his mouth and shouts, "You heard them. Prep time is over. Let's go kick some pirate ass." Expecting any sort of reaction, The boy's chest deflates as the room falls silent, all eyes on him. "You heard the kid. Get your asses out there," comes Zeph's booming voice. Hearing the familiar call of the restaurant owner, the chefs cheer loudly. Picking up their weapons, they march towards the door. Returning from raising the fins, Rika spots Kobe and rushes to join the older boy. She asks quietly, "What's going on?" Looking at the girl in amusement, Kobe replies, "It's time to start fighting, kid." Bouncing on her toes, the young girl rushes to join the chefs congregating at the door. In her excitement, Rika shouts, "Hooray, that's my favorite part." "What a weird childhood she's going to have," comes the amused voice of Kobe from behind her. Noticing that Luffy is still coloring at the table, Kobe walks over and places his hand on the captain's shoulder. "It's time, Don Krieg's men are here." Annoyed at the interruption, the straw hat wearing boy flicks his hand away and says absent-mindedly, "Just a few more minutes, I'm sure they'll be fine." Deciding not to argue, Kobe joins the others at the door. When he gets close, he hears a few frustrated mutterings before Carney's voice cuts through the chatter. "The hell are you all waiting for? Just open the damn thing." One of the chefs grabs hold of the still jiggling handle and quickly twists it unlocked before pushing outward with all his might. The door is flung open, launching several pirates crowding it backward. Light pours in through the cavity, and for a moment the chefs gawk at the size of the force in front of them before charging through the door frame and engaging in combat with the Don Krieg's crew. More pirates continue to pull themselves out of the water and join their comrades as the battle wages on outside the Bharati dining room. Most of the Bharati chefs proved themselves capable of holding their own against the pirates, but the size of the enemy force is difficult for them to contend with. Don Krieg shouts orders at his crew from a small raft of hastily tied together parts of his former ship. Patty and Carne push through the sea of pirates toward the front line to reach Don Krieg. After landing a devastating blow on one of the pirates in his way, Patty shouts, "See that, Krieg? The next one is going to be you." As soon as the words exit the chef's mouth, a large man with iron plates covering his front, back, knees and elbows and matching plates in each hand lands in front of Carne and Patty. He is accompanied by a short, skinny man holding two swords. The larger man shouts, "If you want to get to the captain, you'll have to go through us. I'm Pearl the Iron Wall and he is Jam the Swift Blade. We are the sword and shield of the Krieg pirates." Not waiting for the chefs to answer his challenge, Pearl punches forward with both hands, connecting with the chefs and sending them flying backward and into the wall of the Bharati as he shouts, "Pearl surprise." Outside the front door of the Bharati, Rika hears Pearl's booming voice and glancing over notices the gangly swordsman. Deciding that he would be a more fun opponent than the pirate she was toying with, the young girl refocuses on her opponents just long enough to deflect an incoming attack with her longsword before thrusting her short sword into the pirate's stomach. Withdrawing her blade quickly, she darts through the sea of pirates and chefs towards her intended opponent, while the pirate she had defeated chuches at his wound before falling backward onto the ground. Due to her small size, she can weave and dodge between the pirates and chefs engaged in battle as she races across the deck. Luffy's unmistakable voice calls out, "All finished. Who do I get to fight?" A moment later, a pair of rubber hands pass by on Rika's right. She sees him grab the edge of the dock as his voice rings out across the battlefield. "Gum Gum Rocket." Instinctually, Rika rolls to the left as Luffy's body flies through the air, knocking over everyone in his path. Regaining her footing, a thought flashes through Rika's mind, "I'm glad he's on our side." She continues to hurry forward, most of the way before her cleared by Luffy's attack until she arrives in front of Jam. Leveling her swords in a defensive pose, the young girl shouts, "I'll make you regret coming here." The duo looks at one another before bursting out in laughter. After a moment, Jam choked out, "Bah ha 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 ha. What the heck do you think you can do against us, little girl? I'm the fastest swordsman on the East Blue and we have never faced a threat that could make Pearl bleed. Together we're invincible." Calming himself down, Pearl echoes the word, "invincible," which Jam in turn echoes back. The pair go back and forth repeating the word louder each time. Rushing forward, Rika slashes her short sword at Jam's leg, slicing through the fabric and leaving a deep cut. "How's that for invincible?" She retreats backward as the pair's replaced by rage and they advance towards her. Luffy's rubbery body sails over the open ocean before colliding with Don Krieg's, knocking the larger pirate into the cold water. Surfacing, The pirate spits salty water out in a stream before grabbing the raft and tipping it on its side as he pulls himself onto it. As the raft moves under his feet, Luffy grabs hold of the edge, trying to avoid falling into the water. In his desperation not to be pulled in, he is unable to stop Don Krieg from climbing aboard. The large pirate grabs the boy, lifts him into the air and shouts, "How dare you!" Raising Luffy over his head, he uses both hands to throw him back towards the Baratie. Laughing as he sails through the air, Luffy slams into Pearl's back, causing the large man's head to whip forward and slam into the plate of armor on his chest. Dropping to the ground behind the large man, Luffy springs back to his feet. "Woo! You look so freaking cool, I want armor like that." Placing his right hand against his nose for a moment, Pearl pulls the hand away as his eyes grow wide. His palm is soaked in blood, a sight that he thought impossible. Spinning around to face the rubber boy, he shouts, "How dare you! No one has ever made me bleed before." Luffy takes a step back. "It's not my fault." He raises his hands in front of him, trying to create a barrier between himself and the large pirate. Furious, Pearl slams his hands together, causing the pirates around him to back away in fear. From the raft comes Don Krieg's shout, "Calm down, Pearl. It's just a bloody nose." His warning is ignored as the man continues to bang the plates in his hands together harder and faster. Alerted by the noise, Kobe, Sanji and Zeph walk to the entrance to get a better view as the fighting slows to a stop. The pirates and chef's focus now captured by the raging Pearl. Suddenly the large man's body bursts into flames, forcing Jam, Luffy and Rika to leap backwards to avoid being engulfed. A grin spreads across Luffy's face. "This guy's incredible. He has to show me how he did that." Turning towards the Baratie, the large man's eyes roll upwards until only the whites can be seen. He screams in rage, "Fire Pearl, big bonus!" Iron balls embedded in his shields are launched in all directions, setting much of the deck ablaze and igniting several nearby pirates and chefs. As the deck burns, the pirates and chefs scramble for safety. "This isn't good," shouts one. "He's going to burn down our ship," comes the voice of another. Several of the combatants, who had moments earlier been locked in battle, grasp hold of each other as they back away from the advancing flames. One of the chefs near the doorway shouts, "This whole place is going to go up if we don't do something." Grabbing a fresh cigarette from his pocket and placing it into his mouth without bothering to light it, Sanji mumbles, "Not on my watch." Sprinting towards Pearl, he leaps into the air. Still recovering from their earlier defeat at Pearl's hands, Patty and Carne gawk at the young chef. Regaining his faculties, Patty shouts, "No, Sanji, you'll be burned alive." Dropping from the sky above the large pirate, Sanji brings his right foot down, connecting with the shield held in Pearl's left hand with a loud clank. Descending to the ground, the chef lands on his left foot and allows his right foot to drop beside it as he pulls the unlit cigarette from his mouth. A ring of flames ignites around the pair, obscuring them from view. "How are you not afraid of my fire?" Pearl's pupils have descended back into place and he stares at the chef in shock. Grinning, the chef reaches the tip of his cigarette towards the ring of fire, allowing it to ignite as he responds, "If fire scared me, I'd be a pretty lousy chef." Placing the now lit cigarette into his mouth, he charges toward Pearl, delivering a kick to the armored warrior's iron chest and knocking him backward. Before the pirate can recover, Sanji leaps into the air and brings his left foot down onto Pearl's head, sending the large pirate crashing to the ground in a daze. The flames emanating from the pirate's body are extinguished as he fights to remain conscious. Darting from the doorway of the Baratie, Kobe marks a beeline for a pile of buckets and begins tossing them to the nearby pirates and chefs. "Put out the fire." They all listen obediently and rush to the ocean to fill the buckets with water before using it to extinguish the flames. Once the fires have been put out, the pirates and chef's deck let out a loud cheer and embrace one another. It takes a few moments before the shock of the fire emergency fades away and the groups resume their fights. Meanwhile, Sanji stands over Pearl, who struggles to lift himself from the ground, still dizzy from the previous attack. As the chef prepares his next attack, he hears the blast of a shotgun from the Baratie and eyes wide turns to see Jin standing over Zeph. The pirate lowers the muzzle of his gun slowly to the old man's head as his eyes meet Sanji's. He says in a hardened voice, "Don't make this any harder than it has to be, Sanji." Gritting his teeth, Sanji turns back to Pearl in time for the pirate to slam his face with the shield held in the large man's right hand. Flying backwards, he lands on his back as Pearl chases after him. Groaning in pain, he lifts his head enough to catch Jin's eyes and shouts, "You coward! After all I did for you, how dare you pull a stunt like this?" As the blonde chef rises to his feet, Pearl slams his fist into his midsection, driving the cigarette from his lips as he doubles over in pain. Not far from Sanji and Pearl, Rika exchanges blows with Jam. His speed is incredible and she struggles to keep up as he pushes her towards the edge of the dock. Eyes wide, she notices that the left fin of the Barati has caught fire. She loudly shouts, "The fin is on fire!" She ducks her head as Jam's sword swings through the air. "I can't drop my guard for a second, somebody else can handle the fire." As the pair near the edge of the dock, Rika remembers Johnny and Yosaku's small dinghy. As she dodges another strike by Jam, she positions herself between her opponent and the small boat. With a small smirk, she allows Jam to continue pushing her towards the water. Once the ship is close enough, the girl leaps backward, landing on the small deck, before sidestepping around the mast, placing it between Jam and herself. The older swordsman leaps from the dock onto the boat and circles clockwise around the mast, attempting to get to Rika, who matches his pace. "You can't avoid me all day, little girl." Her foot connects with a cast iron pan and stabs her long sword into the mast. She snakes her foot under the handle of the pan before kicking it upwards into the air. Grabbing the handle as soon as it is in range, she refocuses her attention on Jam, who has rounded the mast to face her. Mustering all her strength, she hurls the pan at the swordsman's stomach, knocking the wind from his lungs. As he gasps for breath, she closes the distance between them. One sword style. Timeout strike. She drives the blade of her short sword into the Jam's right wrist. Howling in pain, Jam drops his sword and stares at his wrist, trying to will his hand to move. Distracted, he doesn't notice as the girl again shouts, "One sword style. Timeout strike," before stabbing through his left wrist, forcing him to drop his other blade. Dropping to his knees, he looks up pleadingly at the young girl, who is doing her best to imitate Zoro's cruel grin. "Please don't kill me." The wicked look is replaced with a childish smile as the girl replies, "Okay." Using the flat of her blade, she smacks the swordsman on the top of the head, sending him crumpling to the ground. She quickly retrieves her longsword, looking over her shoulder to verify that Jam is unconscious before climbing out of the boat and rejoining the fight through the combatants in a wave. The fin is on fire. As it is repeated from person to person, a sense of hope builds that the warning will reach someone who can fix it. Finally, the message reaches Luffy, who turns to look at the burning fin. Thinking fast, the boy sprints towards the flames, skidding to a stop in front of the fin. Lifting his foot high into the air, he exclaims, "Gum gum battle axe," before bringing the foot crashing down into the fin, extinguishing the flames and sending shards of wood flying in every direction. With a grin, the pirate captain turns back to the battlefield. His joy is immediately crushed when he sees that nobody is paying attention to his heroic action. Ungrateful jerks. He decides to take out his rage on the battlefield. Looking up, he sees a small deck one level above and gets an idea. Laughing, the boy with the straw hat climbs the side of the restaurant before leaping over the railing onto the deck. He rushes towards the center and peers over the side. Seeing a densely packed group of pirates and cooks, the young boy grabs hold of the railing with both hands and begins walking backways. She. Gum gum rocket. His body flies over the barrier like a missile aimed at the combatants below. As his arms stretch to either side, he shouts, "Gum gum scythe." He knocks over combatants indiscriminately as his arms clothesline everyone on either side of him. By the time he lands and can skid to a stop, 6 chefs and 15 pirates lay on the ground, groaning in pain. Filled with rage, Kobe shouts, "What are you thinking, Luffy? You just beat up our men." Luffy angrily shouts back, "Quit being a jerk, Kobe. I took out a bunch of pirates too." The pirate captain notices a group of 3 pirates who are fleeing a pair of chefs. He stretches his leg out, "Gum gum whip." He twists his body, connecting with the pirates and launching them through the air into the ocean. He narrowly misses the chefs, who manage to stop in time to avoid being swept up in the attack. Laughing, the boy shouts at Kobe, She, just pirates that time." In the middle of the deck, Sanji is lying on the ground. Pearl stands over him delivering blow after blow to his midsection as the cook convulses in pain. His eyes begin to glaze over as he feels his consciousness trying to slip away. He hears the sound of a pistol being fired followed by a thud as the attack on his unprotected body stops. Opening his eyes, he sees the blurred outline of a gaunt man standing over him. The stranger reaches down to take hold of his hand, helping the chef to his feet. As his vision clears, he registers Jin's face. Confused and concerned, the chef asks, "Why did?" Before he can finish the question, Jin's fist connects with his stomach, dropping the chef to his knees as he coughs up blood. A cruel smile creeps across Jin's face as he drops the shotgun and pulls out a pair of tonfa that each end in a weighted sphere. "Because Sanji, I couldn't let him take this from me." Spinning the tonfa in his left hand, the weighted end connects with Sanji's face, knocking the chef backward as his nose begins bleeding profusely. The chef manages to push himself back to a standing position as Jin casually walks towards him, twirling the tonfa in his hands. Swinging for Sanji's head with the weapon in his right hand, the chef manages to duck out of the way at the last second and attempts to sweep Jin's legs out from under him. Before the chef's foot makes contact, Sanji feels a piercing pain in his right side as the tonfa in Jin's left hand strikes him in the rib cage, driving him into the deck. Sanji looks up at Jin, who quickly closes the distance between them. "Why are you doing this?" As he raises his weapon, Jin hears Don Krieg's distant voice. "Do it, Jin! Kill that bastard!" He breathes slowly as he looks down at the chef, who lies helpless on the ground. "What are you doing, Jin? Just kill him. You've done this 100 times before. Stop being a coward." But he couldn't. The memory of Sanji saving him from starvation played in his head as he felt warm liquid running down his cheeks. "I can't kill this man." Lowering his weapons, he allows them to drop to the ground on either side of his body. He chokes out, "I'm so sorry, Sanji." Sanji looks up at Jin. What is going on? Is he going to kill me or not? He places a hand on the pirate's leg. "I forgive you." From the water, Don Krieg's voice raises in rage. "I said to kill him, Jin. Don't you dare defy my orders." Ignoring his captain, Jin reaches down and helps Sanji to his feet. Noticing the chef struggling to keep his balance, he wraps an arm behind his back to offer support. Looking out at the raft floating on the water, he locks eyes with Don Krieg. "No." Eyes wide and nostrils flaring, Don Krieg glares at his subordinate before pulling out a mask. His response is loud and clear. "Then you leave me no choice. Any pirates who are still loyal to me, it's time for MH5. The pirates slow their fighting and chuckle as they pull gas masks out and attach them to their faces. Jin pulls a mask of his own from his pocket and, looking down at it for several moments, turns towards Sanji and places the mask on his face. "Here. You deserve this more than I do." Confused by this new behavior from their enemies, the chefs shuffle back towards the Bharati as the pirates continue to laugh, not bothering to pursue them. Placing his mask on his face, Krieg aims his chest towards the center of the deck. A red explosive is fired from his left shoulder plate and explodes in the center of the deck, releasing a plume of gas that spreads out in every direction. The chefs hasten their retreat into the dining room and close the door behind them. Outside, Luffy attempts to outrun the gas, but is quickly overtaken and drops to the ground, erupting into a coughing fit. Kobe also falls to the ground, pulling his shirt above his nose, trying to filter the gas despite lacking a mask to protect himself. Thinking quickly, Rika rushes to the small boat where she had left Jam. Finding him lying where she had left him, he is slapping his arms against his pocket, trying uselessly to pull the mask out, and she easily slips her small hand in and retreats it before slapping it onto her face. Unable to stop her, a tear runs down Jam's cheek as the girl exits the boat. "Please don't leave me to die." Taking pity on the swordsman, she quickly unties the dinghy and uses her foot to push it away from the dock. Drawing her swords, she plunges back into the battlefield. She encounters a distracted pirate. She slashes across the back of his legs, causing him to fall to the ground, and as she rushes by, she yanks the mask off of his face and tosses it towards the older pink-haired boy who is covering his face with a shirt. "You better be Kobe or I just made a huge mistake." She immediately comes upon a second pirate, who turns to face her just in time to be sliced across the chest. As he clutches at the newly opened wound, the girl leaps into the air, snatching the mask off of his head. Landing on the deck, she spots a familiar-looking straw hat on top of a man lying face down on the ground. Rushing to his side, she lifts his head, sliding the mask over his face before letting it drop back to the deck. "It's all up to you now, Luffy." The two pirates whose masks had been removed make their way toward the edge of the dock and jump into the ocean, desperate to escape from the toxic cloud. Thankful for the mask, Kobe quickly pulls it over his face, letting his shirt drop away. Pulling his club out, he spots a pirate pointing at him. The man is saying something, but his voice is muffled by the mask on his face. Walking quickly towards the pirate, he fakes a swing at the man's legs, causing him to jump into the air to dodge the attack. Kobe pulls his club back slightly and swings higher, aiming at the descending pirate's back. It connects with a crumples to the ground in a heap. Reaching down, Kobe removes the mask from the pirate's face before looking around. Spotting Sanji holding a coughing Jin, he lobs the mask to the chef before shifting his focus to the downed pirate. Reaching under the man, he scoops him into his arms and carries him to the entrance to the restaurant. He kicks the door several times until finally it is tossed open. Handing the downed man to Patty, he returns to the battlefield. Inside the dining room, Patty walks the pirate to one of the large support posts and drops him roughly onto the ground. Two other chefs quickly join him carrying a rope, and together they tie the man to the wooden post. Luffy's eyes open slowly as he takes a large lungful of air filtered through the mask. Standing up, he shakes his head, trying to regain his focus. As his vision clears, he locks his sight onto Krieg, whose raft has reached the dock. Rising to his feet, the boy walks purposefully towards the large man, ignoring the pirates around him as they begin to charge toward Kobe and Rika, who back up against one another and prepare to fight them off. Pointing at Krieg, the mask muffles his shout, "How could you, poisoning everyone here just to win a stupid fight? You make me sick." He picks up his pace, pulling his arm back, gum, launching his fist forward. He connects with Krieg's stomach and immediately retracts the fist towards himself. Bullet! The blow knocks Krieg back slightly, but he manages to stop himself from falling into the ocean for a third time. Near the center of the dock, Sanji places the mask Rika had tossed him onto Jin's face. As the pair recover from their fight and subsequent poisoning, they see Rika and Kobe fighting off the horde of pirates. Rika's swords seemingly dance on their own as each pirate she defeats is replaced by another. Behind her, she can feel the older boy's body stiffen each time he swings his club, accompanied by the thud of a body hitting the ground. She shouts, "How many was that, Kobe?" Swinging his club down onto the head of a blue-haired pirate, the boy responds, 23, how about you?" Knocking down a red-headed man holding a spear, the girl shouts back, 20 over here. She is rushed by a pair of burly pirates, with crowbars lifted over their heads. Waiting until they are within striking distance, she thrusts her swords into their stomachs, "Make that 22. The pair hear a shout from the Bharati, as the chefs pour out of the dining room, wearing gas masks and engage with the remaining pirates. The pair look down and notice that the majority of the pirates that they had previously defeated are missing. As the remaining Krieg pirates turn their attention to the oncoming chefs, the pair head to the dining room to rest and recover. As soon as they are inside, they see dozens of pirates tied up to support posts. Laughing, Rika points at the captives, "Tee-hee-hee-hee, guess that's how the cooks got their masks." Luffy continues his assault against Krieg. As the larger pirate opens fire from his chest, the bullets connect with the rubber boy's stomach, causing it to stretch backward before they are flung back towards Krieg and bounce off of his armor. Reaching his arms towards Krieg, the rubber boy twists them around one another as they stretch through the air before he grabs hold of the pirate's shoulders. With a maniacal grin, the young pirate shouts, "Gum hammer." Yanking his arms towards himself, he allows them to untwist, spinning the larger pirate before slamming him into the ground. As the large man picks himself up, the young pirate walks confidently towards him, laughing, "She, you had enough yet, old man?" The boy leaps into the air, somersaulting over the opposing captain's head and lands between him and the ocean. The boy again stretches his rubbery hands forward. Krieg is ready to break the boy's hold if he attempts to grab him, but is surprised when the hands sail by on either side of his body. Laughing, the larger pirate runs towards the rubber boy, hoping to improve his odds by engaging in close-ranged combat. "Wahahaha, you missed, rubber boy." Luffy laughs, "She's, you sure about that? He takes several steps backward before yelling, "Gum gum sickle." Suddenly the boy's body begins flying towards Krieg. He has just enough time to brace himself before their bodies meet. Krieg is sent flying backward towards the entrance of the Baratie along with Luffy. As they travel through the air, the young pirate releases his hold on the doorframe of the dining room. As his arms retract towards him, he winds them tightly around Krieg's torso, holding him in place. Krieg's back slams against the wall in the dining room, and half a second later Luffy smashes into the front of his body. The pair fall to the ground in a heap, dazed from the impact. Krieg is the first to recover, his armor shielding him from most damage. Rising to his feet, he reaches his left arm towards Luffy and fires a weighted steel net from his arm guard, which wraps around the boy and fastens together behind his back. He laughs again at the captive pirate. Wahahaha. All that effort and you still lose. Seeing their captain captured, Rika and Kobe rush to his aid. Seeing the pair coming, Krieg removes his shoulder plates, revealed to be connected by a long steel pole. Taking hold of the pole, he swings the newly revealed spear at the duo. As soon as it connects, the external surface of the shoulder plate explodes, sending the pair careening through the air and crashing into the rear wall of the dining room. Lifting the weighted net with his left hand, Krieg walks back out through the front door of the Baratie and yells loud enough to draw the remaining combatants' attention. "I have your boss. If you value his life, I would suggest giving up now." The fighting dies down as the cooks exchange confused looks. Finally, Patty responds, "Why should we care what you do with the chore boy?" His eyes widen as Don Krieg looks into the net and sees Luffy grinning at him. He mouths the words, "Chore boy?" with a questioning stare before turning back to address the large cook. "Well, whatever his job is, this kid is the strongest person here. Without him, what hope do the rest of you have against me?" Trying to stall for time, Patty continues to engage the pirate as Luffy carefully feeds his legs through the holes of the net. "Who cares if you beat up that runt? We could all do that with our hands tied behind our backs." The other chefs laugh, playing along. Krieg drops the net on the ground, focusing on the chef before him as Luffy stretches his legs. He twists his legs around one another as they grow. Irritated, Krieg shouts, "The hell you could! That boy practically killed me. None of you weaklings can." He glances around, noticing how few of his pirates remain on the battlefield. Even contend with his pace slows down as he notices his right hand Jin accompanied by one of the chefs closing in on his position with a murderous look in his eyes. "Crew." Suddenly he feels something tighten around his midsection and looks down to see a pair of legs that have somehow made multiple loops around his body and are now tightly locked into place. Don Krieg's gaze flicks upwards and he sees Luffy across the deck. His hands are tightly gripping the edge of the dock and he is grinning like a madman. Patty laughs, "Da ha 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 ha. Shouldn't have taken your eyes off the chore boy, Krieg." Luffy's legs feel like they will snap if he holds his position much longer. Taking a deep breath he shouts, "Gum gum giant hammer." Releasing the edge of the dock, the boy spins through the air. The rushing wind drowns out all other noise as he flies towards his opponent. His body, weighted down by the net, collides with the larger pirates, sending the pair spiraling through the air. Upon impact, Don Krieg's armor is shattered, send metal into the deck and walls of the Baratie. The net that Luffy is held in bursts open, freeing the rubber boy. In a panic, Luffy stretches his arms downwards, attempting to grab the dock as his body is hurled over off the far side of the deck. Unfortunately, he fails to find purchase before his body lands in the cold water with a splash. His eyes grow wide as he desperately attempts to swim, forgetting in a panic that his devil fruit prevents him from doing so. Don Krieg lands on the dock near the edge. He vomits a mixture of blood and bile next to him, before attempting to stand. Fruitlessly trying to push himself up, he hears footsteps approaching. Krieg catches sight of the blonde chef diving into the water and Jin standing beside him at the edge of the dock, eyes focused on what is happening beneath the surface. Reaching into his undercoat, Don Krieg pulls out a pistol and aims it at a group of white bubbles that he presumes are coming from the boy trapped underwater. On the deck, the remaining pirates drop their weapons. Seeing their captain defeated, the last shreds of hope fade from their eyes. They willingly hand themselves to the cooks who lead them into the dining room and tie them to the posts. One of the chefs swims out to retrieve the dinghy that Jam is floating in and carries him with Pearl into the restaurant to be bound alongside their crewmates. They are soon joined by Jin, Kobe, Luffy, Sanji and Rika, who drag the unconscious Krieg with them and after thoroughly checking his body for hidden weapons tie him up with the rest of his crew. The group is silent, as they contemplate what to do next. The silence is interrupted by Zeph, who bellows, "I don't give a damn what you do with the rest of this lot, but I'm turning Krieg in for his bounty. 17 million berry is more than enough to repair the damage they did to my restaurant." The others nod, before silence again falls on the group. Grin breaks the silence with an apology. "I'm sorry for the trouble we caused. After everything you did for me and our captain, you did not deserve what we did here today." The restrained pirates nod in agreement, regret painted on their faces. Sighing, Sanji pulls out a cigarette and lights it. Inhaling deeply, he blows out a stream of smoke. "Don't we have an old supply ship that's been gathering rust? The thing will probably sink halfway to the next island, but it's better than trying to salvage whatever is left of their old ship." Zeph nods approvingly. For once in his life Sanji has a good idea. "Patty and Carne, fetch that old rust bucket and get these pirates in it. I'm sick of looking at them." "The best idea would be tossing your ass on that boat with them, you old geezer." Glaring at the older man, Sanji draws in another lungful of smoke and blows it out into a rain. As Patty and Carne rush out the side door to secure the ship, Zeph and Sanji stare daggers at one another. Eventually, Luffy breaks the tension. "What's there to eat? I'm starving." Breaking the stare down with his mentor, Sanji turns and walks into the kitchen. Several minutes later he returns with plates and begins serving the hungry combatants. Luffy and his crew immediately dig into the food. It was some of the best food they had ever tasted and they could stop themselves from letting out small sounds of enjoyment throughout the meal. The other chefs look first at their plates before looking up at Zeph, seeking his permission. With a sly grin, Zeph crosses his arms in front of his chest, making an X shape that goes unnoticed by Sanji. Each chef, in turn, takes a bite of their dish before spitting it out, walking to the trash and depositing the food inside. With each rejection, sadness builds in Sanji until he feels full to bursting with shame. As the final chef discards his food, Zeph clears his throat. "Well Sanji, it looks like after all this time and training you still can't put together an edible dish. There is nothing more that I can do with a hopeless case like yours. I'm afraid I'm going to have to let you go." The cigarette drops from Sanji's lips and falls to the ground unnoticed as his mouth hangs open in shock. After a moment his faculties return. "None of you assholes would know good food if it hit you over the head. Don't bother firing me, I quit." Completely oblivious to his surroundings, Luffy finishes his plate, and that was delicious. He belches loudly and giggles. "You idiots! Even a fool like him knows how good my food is." Sanji points at the rubber boy. Luffy pats his belly with a content look. "That was the best food I've ever eaten." Kobe elbows his captain. Recognizing what Zeph is trying to accomplish and not wanting to let the impulsive boy ruin it, he glares at his pink-haired friend. "What was that for?" As Sanji storms towards the exit to the dining room, he is momentarily blocked by Patty and Carne, who barge through. With a grin, Carne hollers, "All right, let's load him up. Take too long and the ship will sink before we can get rid of these pirates." As the cooks begin untying the pirates, Sanji slips out through the door. He is quickly joined by Jin, who walks with him towards the boat Patty and Carne had brought. Catching sight of the pair and recognizing their bond gives Luffy an idea. Jin places a hand on his friend's shoulder to comfort him. "Screw those guys. We both know how good your food is." Wiping away tears with his arm, Sanji choked out, "I can no, its street still hurts." Grinning, the pirate asks, "Hurt as much as when I beat you senseless earlier?" Eyes downcast, Sanji says dejectedly, "Much worse." Soon they are joined by the chefs who lead the formerly captive pirates onto the boat. Jin turns to the group gathered to see the ship off and waves, "Thanks for everything. I promise we won't give you any more trouble." A voice rings out loudly from Luffy, "What do you mean we?" Jin turns to the boy, a confused look on his face, "I mean we, the Krieg pirates. I'll make sure we don't bother any of you again. What don't you understand about that straw hat?" Grinning, Luffy laces his fingers together behind his head. "What I mean is, how are you going to make sure that happens when you join my crew? With a hothead like our chef here." He points his thumb at Sanji. We could use a tough master at arms to keep everyone in line. Glaring at the boy, Sanji prepares to argue that he hasn't yet agreed to join the crew but realizes that, having been fired, he has lost his reason to say no. What about my crew? Jin asks. He wasn't sure what to make of the offer, having never considered leaving the Krieg pirates. They aren't your crew, they're Don Krieg's. Sanji interjects. The same Don Krieg they watched you try to bludgeon to death 20 minutes ago. Pearl's voice, still slightly dazed, croaks out from the boat. That's a good point. You did try to kill the boss. He looks around at the rest of the crew for support. Should we murder this guy? Sanji grins. You sure you want to be stuck on a boat with them? Eyes wide, Jin steps away from the boat and turns to face his crew. Several braver members have picked up their weapons and are sizing him up. The pirate nearest the entrance braces himself and places his foot on the bottom step leading to the dock. Zeph's voice rings across the deck. Don't you dare take a step off that boat or I'll end the lot of you. The pirates shrink back at the threat but continue to eye Jin. Continuing to walk backward, now slightly fearful of his crew, Jin bumps into Luffy's chest. Turning, he spits out, "Fine, sure. I'll join your crew. Get me away from these guys." Luffy stretches his arms out and slams them against the small craft, setting it adrift. He laughs as his arms snap back into place. She, how's that? Jin watches as the anger melts away from his now debarking former crew, replaced with smiles. As they drift away, his former crew shouts encouraging words at him. "You can do it, Jin," says one. "Show the Grand Line who's boss," calls out another. Shaking his head, he grins. "I can't believe you tricked me like that. You're Krieg's pirates," he waves at the departing vessel. Once the small ship has faded from view, Sanji mentions casually, "You know, chore boy, I never agreed to be on your crew." She. I guess you didn't. So what do you say, Sanji? Will you be our chef? A toothed grin stretches across his face as he waits for an answer. Placing his index finger against his chin, the chef pretends to ponder the idea. "I don't know. What if I want to open up a restaurant of my own first? Can you wait 5 to 10 years for me to get that up and going?" Rika looks up at Sanji. She bats her eyelashes and says in a baby voice, "Puis Sanji? We ally need your HEWP." His face splits and tosses a hand on the small girl's hair, ruffling it. "I suppose I can't say no to a lady, can I? Alright Luffy, I'll be your chef." Rika's cheeks flush in embarrassment at being called a lady and her heart beats rapidly. She breathes slowly to calm herself down. Wrapping his arms around Jin and Sanji, Luffy squeezes them in a tight bear hug. "Alright, 2 more members of the crew. This is awesome." When the boy releases the pair, they fight to catch their breath, caught off guard by his strength. Tapping Luffy on the shoulder, Kobe asks, "Where are we going next, Captain?" Luffy turns to the pink-haired boy. "The Konami Islands. That's where Nami went, so that's where we have to go." Rika offers, "We still have the dinghy, but I don't think it'll fit all 5 of us." "Not to worry, we'll take the Shimashima shopping." Sanji points to his left at a small sailboat. "It should be big enough to fit all of us and it's a pretty quick ship. It's the best option if we want to go fast." Luffy beams, "That settles it. We'll leave the dinghy here and take that shimmy-shammy shopping boat to get Nami." Before he can move, Zeph calls out, "Wait." He pushes through the chefs and approaches Luffy holding a small book. He presents it to Luffy, who looks confused. "Take my logbook. I'd never give it to a SBAG like Krieg, but it may help you on the Grand Line." Looking at the book and back up at the older chef, Luffy shrugs, "Nah, you keep it. This would just ruin the fun for me." With a grin, he spins on his heel and races towards the ship. Leaping onto the deck, he taps his toes impatiently against the wooden boards as he waits for the others to join him. Smiling and shaking his head at the boy, Zeph shouts, "You're a damn fool, Luffy." He thinks back on his days as a pirate. "That's exactly what I'd have said in your shoes. Take care of Sanji for me, chore boy." As the group joins their captain aboard the small ship, Kobe unties it from the dock and they set out to sea while the other chefs gather to wave goodbye. Zeph calls out to them, "You better not give them all food poisoning, Sanji." Smiling, the young chef shouts back, "Don't worry, old timer. Unlike you, I know when my food is ready to be served." The chefs on the shore laugh as Zeph's face turns bright red. As Kobe pilots the boat towards the Konami Islands, Jin approaches Luffy with an apologetic look. "I should have mentioned this earlier, but I have a bounty on my head." You do? Luffy's eyes widen in excitement. How big is it? Jin sheepishly answers, 12 million belly. He braces himself for the captain's rage. Mouth dropping open in shock, Luffy places his hands on Jin's shoulders. Amazing, a 12 million belly bounty on my crew? That's incredible. Relieved that the captain was excited rather than angry, Jin smiles back at the boy. Glad you think it's a good thing. Most people would be upset at the attention I bring from bounty hunters. Luffy shrugs and responds casually, we have a few bounty hunters in the crew. It's not a big deal. Jin's eyes bulge. You, what? What do you mean you have bounty hunters in your crew? The captain laughs, she's, sure. We've got the pirate hunter Zoro. You might have seen him fight off Mihawk earlier. Then there is Johnny and Yosaku, who used to be a bounty hunting duo. Cocking his head to the side as Jin starts to panic, Luffy asks, is that weird? Jin's mouth hangs open as he tries to process what Luffy has just told him. Eventually, he sputters, why you mean that swordsman who fought Mihawk is part of your sea crew? Luffy nods. And he's the notorious bounty hunter Roronoa Z Zoro? Regaining his composure, he takes a deep breath. You do need a master at arms with guys like that in your crew. Laughing, Luffy says, she, we sure do. Good thing we found you, huh? Nodding his head, Jin agrees. Yeah, good thing. In his head, he wonders, what have I gotten myself into? He had assumed that Luffy's crew was made up of himself, Kobe, Luffy, Rika, Sanji and whomever this Nami was that they were tracking down. Seeing how fiercely they had fought back on the Baratie, it hadn't occurred to him that there might be others. Exactly how big is your crew, Luffy? Shrugging his shoulders, the boy begins counting on his fingers. 14 right now. Once we find Nami it'll be 15. Plus our mascot Chow Chow. Why? Breathing out slowly, Jin responds, no reason. Making sure I know what to expect. I think I need to sit down for a bit, feeling a little bit dizzy from the poison. He hoped Luffy bought the excuse as he walked inside the cabin to lie down. 15 crew members, it wasn't nearly as many as the Don Krieg pirates, but with the likes of Roronoa Zoro amongst them, they were certainly a force to be reckoned with. Maybe his next trip to the Grand Line would end differently than the last one. Back on the Going Merry, the crew settles into their roles. Initially, Zoro resists being confined to a bed, but Kaya gives him a sedative to help him relax, and eventually, the swordsman gives in. Outside the room, Chow Chow paces the hallway, to prevent anyone from interrupting the swordsman's sleep and to prevent him from sneaking away to get drunk. In the kitchen, Ninjin does his best to invent meals for the crew that he can make alone. Eventually, he settles on grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch and stir-fry for dinner. He quickly sets to work pulling out bread and cheese for the sandwiches. Spreading out across the ship, Mary, Piaman and Usopp all check for any accidental damages that may have been caused by Mihawk's attack on the Krieg pirates' ship. Upon finding several smashed structural boards, they start repairing them using leftover wood stored in the basement. On the flying bridge, Johnny and Yosaku fight over the steering wheel as they argue about how to reach the Konami Islands. Holding the logbook, Tamanegi makes his way to the observation room. He plans on taking the evening to outline the attack by Mihawk and the Krieg pirate while it is fresh in his mind, and makes a mental note to ask Kobe when they are reunited how the rest of the conflict unfolded. As he makes his way towards the desk in the center of the room recalling the events from the morning, the boy does not notice the strange man sitting nearby on a couch. As he begins writing, an unfamiliar voice calls out, "If you don't mind my asking, where could a fellow get a stiff drink on this ship?" Not registering how odd the question is or who it is coming from, Tamanegi points at the door, second level of the dining room. Looking up from his writing and at the man, he asks, "Do you mind grabbing me some juice while you're up?" The alarm bells go off in the boy's head as he takes in the stranger for the first time. Placing his pencil down, he slowly rises to his feet. "Who are you?" Rising from the couch, the man walks toward the door. "Oh, don't mind me. I'm just a regular passenger like everyone else on this cruise." Picking up the Den Den Mushi from the table, Tamanegi presses a button before bringing it to his mouth. "We have a situation in the observation room." Throughout the ship, Tamanegi's voice is echoed by the surveillance Den Den Mushi, which are tucked in the corners of most rooms and hallways. He disconnects the line and places the snail back on the table before saying hesitantly, "Don't move if you know what's good for you." Moments later, Johnny and Yosaku barge through the door, out of breath from sprinting down the stairs. They are soon joined by Chow Chow, Kaya, Ninjin, Mary, Piaman and Usopp. The group approaches the newcomer, who has returned to his seat on the couch. Johnny steps menacingly toward the stranger with his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. How the hell did you sneak on the boat, ya? Standing beside his friend Yosaku tightly grips his blade. We been up on deck since leaving that restaurant. We'd a seen ya if ya tried to board. That means you've been here a good minute. Jumping onto the couch next to the man, Chow Chow sniffs his body trying to detect any threats he may pose. He shoves his snout against the man's jean pockets as he searches for hidden weapons. Moving between the swordsmen, Kaya steps between the group and the stranger. Bending down slightly, she puts on her sweetest voice. Do you mind telling us your name? The man nervously clears his throat. This group was not what he had expected when he snuck aboard the large merchant ship. He should have taken a better look at the flags they were flying. As far as he could tell, this crew was full of pirates. He shakily says, "Am my name? Oh yes, am my name? I'm J. Jimmy Scoops. But most of my friends J just call me Attach." Kaya smiles in an attempt to dissuade the man's fear. "Hello Attach. Welcome aboard the Going Shopping. As you may have noticed, we are a pirate crew, but that doesn't mean we can't be civil. What compelled you to come aboard our ship?" She was careful not to accuse him of doing something that might embarrass the man and cause him to clam up. From behind her, Johnny and Yosaku snort and roll their eyes, releasing their weapons and folding their arms across their chests. They didn't trust this stowaway and both felt Kaya was showing him too much mercy. Usopp and Mary circle the pair of swordsmen, flanking Kaya on either side, ready to step in if needed. Ninjin and Piaman are met by Tamanegi, and the trio creep around the back of the couch until they are on the side furthest from the group so that they can get a clear view of this stranger. Swallowing hard, Jimmy decides that the truth may be more convincing than any lie he can come up with. "I boarded your ship after Mahawk cut the Don Krieg pirates' boat in half. Everybody I came here with was hiding in the dining room. I decided I didn't want to get sliced up by a warlord or those bloodthirsty pirates, so I boarded this ship. Figured I'd hitch a ride to the next island and then find my way home from there. I thought this was a merchant vessel, but it sounds like that was a mistake on my part." Kaya continues to smile sweetly at the man. "Then I suppose all that's left is to figure out how you'll be paying for this trip." Wrinkling his brow in confusion, Jimmy searches Kaya's eyes, trying to determine if she is joking or telling the truth. "Paying? You mean you aren't going to toss me over?" Laughing, Kaya places her hand lightly on the man's knee to reassure him. "Tee. Heavens no, why would we toss you into the ocean? That's barbaric." Relief washes over the man and he sits up straighter in his chair. "I'll pay anything. I can always expense it, especially if you will allow me to take a few pictures of the ship. I work for the—" He snaps his lips closed as the group leans towards him. He had almost told them that he worked for the Marines photography department. He swallows hard. "Newspaper. We are always looking for the next big story, and a first-hand experience living on a pirate ship would be huge." He glances at the faces around him, a bead of sweat forming on his brow, hoping that they believe his story. With a laugh, Usopp inadvertently comes to Jimmy's rescue. "Amazing. I've always thought that the exploits of Captain Usopp belonged in the news. You hear that? The Usopp pirates are going to be famous." The three boys behind Jimmy let out a loud cheer, startling the man, who did not notice them migrate to their position on the other side of the couch. Reaching into his pocket, Jimmy pulls out a notebook and pencil. "Usopp pirates, you say? Fascinating. So does that mean you are the captain of this vessel?" Placing his right hand on the back of his head, Usopp scratches nervously. Sure. Basically yes. Which is to say, no, but also kind of. It's complicated." In confusion, Jimmy's eyes dart around, hopeful that someone will explain more clearly. After a moment, Mary says with a sigh, "Our captain is that kid wearing a straw hat back on the Barati. His name is Luffy." Jimmy nods his head, remembering the young boy as Mary continues. "He stayed behind, along with two of our other crew members, to fight off the Don Krieg pirates. He said he'd catch up once he's done there." Jimmy stares incredulously at the man, who has strange antlers growing from his forehead. "You mean to tell me that the three of them can take on the entire Don Krieg pirate crew themselves?" Letting out a snort from behind Kaya, Johnny says, "Pretty sure he'd do it himself if they let. I am. Big bro Luffy's a straight up monster." Eyes wide, Jimmy writes down, Luffy equals magic, on his notepad and underlines it several times. I'm sorry, did you just say he could do it himself? Rushing over to the desk, Tamanegi picks up his logbook and brings it over excitedly. He sure can. Luffy is amazing. You should hear what he did back in Orangetown. Kaya interjects before the boy can continue. We'll have time for that later, Onion. For now, we need to figure out payment. I figure for the food, lodging and entertainment a reasonable price would be 25,000 belly per night. How does that sound, Attach? Jimmy considers the price and for a moment. His daily budget was normally 35,000 belly, so this was a fairly good deal. He nods. I think I can make that work. Depending on where the next stop is. Do you mind if I stay on the ship? That way I'll have more time to interview the crew and write a better story. Smiling, Kaya locks eyes with the man. As long as you keep paying, you can stay as long as you'd like. A devilish look crosses her face and her eyes narrow. But the moment you miss a payment, my friends here are going to toss you overboard. Cracking their knuckles, Johnny and Yosaku grin at the photographer menacingly. The threat catches Jimmy by surprise and it takes him a moment to process. His mind races as he thinks about how much money he has on him. 200,000 should be enough to cover him for a little over a week. He might need to ask for an advance the next time he was near a marine base. He nods slowly. IITH think that should be fine. Beaming, Kaya reaches out her hand. Good, because your first night's rent is due right now. Digging through his pockets, Jimmy pulls out a wad of paper currency and quickly counts out 25,000 belly. He hands it over to the woman who he now realizes is the most terrifying person on the ship. Once the transaction is complete, Kaya places the money carefully into her pocket and leaves the room, making her way towards the safe downstairs before checking in on her patient. The tension in the room eases as soon as Kaya leaves, with Usopp flopping onto the couch next to Jimmy. Johnny and Yosaku take over the empty couch across from them. Chow Chow quickly joins them, making a spot between the pair and stretching out for belly rubs. Mary spots the luggage Jimmy had stored at his feet and without asking takes it down to one of the empty rooms on the second level. Rushing off to the kitchen, Ninjin returns shortly with a plate piled high with grilled cheese sandwiches. Pieman jumps onto the spot next to Jimmy Chow Chow had previously occupied. After passing out food and drinks, Ninjin sits down on the floor in front of Usopp, staring up at Tamanegi who is lacing back and forth reading from the logbook. As he recounts the crew's adventures, Usopp occasionally interjects, adding in an imagined situation involving himself and the Usopp pirates, causing the three boys to burst into laughter. Studiously, Jimmy writes a summary of everything he is told, marking certain portions that he questions with an asterisk. The gathering continues for the remainder. Stories are finished. The boys rush to their rooms and return with arms full of games. Eventually, they are rejoined by Kaya and Mary, who teach the group how to play a complex card game. At some point, Ninjin leaves to cook dinner and returns with the stir-fry, which the group eats together. As the sky grows dark, they all eventually retire to the second floor. Usopp selects a temporary room while Chow Chow chooses to sleep in the hallway outside Zoro's door, keeping watch over the wounded man. On the Shimashima shopping, Kobe, Luffy and Rika take turns sharing stories of their adventures with the disbelieving Jin and Sanji. Occasionally one of the older men will ask a question, trying to rationalize some of the more outlandish portions, but they are quickly met with answers by the excited trio. Eventually, Sanji calls for a break in the storytelling so that he can cook dinner, much to Luffy's delight. Volunteering as a sous chef, Rika carefully observes and tries to copy the more experienced chef's techniques. Before long, the meal is ready and the group eats in silence, focused on the explosive flavors and delicious textures of each dish they are presented with. After the meal, they make idle chat together before eventually retiring to their hammocks. Aboard the Going Merry, Nami finishes her fourth screwdriver as she sits on the main deck. Feeling buzzed, she glances up at the clouds and sees the flag Usopp has carefully painted flapping in the wind. Smiling, she thinks back on the excitement of the flag-making contest with her friends. A thought races across her mind. They aren't my friends any longer, I made sure of that. A tear rolls down her cheek and across her chin before dripping onto the wooden boards beneath her. Reaching into her pocket, she pulls out the bounty poster featuring Arlong. Her mood darkens as she stares at the shark man, filled with disgust and hatred. The tears begin to flow more quickly as she rips the poster down the center, splitting his face in half. She lets out an animalistic scream of rage, unheard by anyone but herself. Damn you, Arlong. She eventually falls asleep on the deck, martini glass rolling back and forth as waves splash against the boat. The three ships make separate journeys towards their shared destination: the Konami Islands, headquarters of the notorious Arlong pirates.